This is the Literary License Podcast with your hosts, Vicky Ray, John Wilson, and Keith Shorgo. Discussing book to screen and everything in between. Coming at you from the UK and USA.
They keep it real.
I'm gonna hide this tape when I'm finished. If none of us make it, at least there'll be some kind of record. The storm's been hitting us hard now for 48 hours. We still have nothing to go on. One other thing. I think it rips through your clothes when it takes you over. Windows found some shredded long johns, but the name tag was missing. They could be anybody's. Nobody trusts anybody now. We're all very tired. Nobody trusts anybody now. There's nothing else I can do. Just wait.
Gentlemen have been through a lot. When you find the time, I'd rather not spend the rest of this winter tied to this fucking couch!
Hello, welcome to the Literary License Podcast, and today we'll be discussing The Thing, the John Carpenter's cult classic of 1982, and Robert Rodriguez's The Faculty, done in 1998. And today we have with us John Wilson.
Hi, folks.
And Vicky Ray.
Hey, we're all here together yet again.
And before we get started, we'd like to have a little thing where we discuss what we've been up to. So, John, what have you been up to?
Last weekend, I went to go see Bohemian Rhapsody with Sammy. I think how do you pronounce his name? Rami Malek.
Okay.
As Mr. Mercury, and it's directed by Bryan Singer. I loved it. I mean, I've loved Queen for a while, but I never really knew the history of them at all. So it actually made me want to dive historically into the band and see what they're about. So I was like Wikipediaing like all the band, and then Freddie, and The music is phenomenal in the movie. It's definitely a fun movie to like kind of watch. And I've been playing I Want to Break Free over and over and over, like the video. I just love that video. It's so good.
I love all their music. I'm going to go see it this weekend. We were waiting for the lines to go down.
Yeah, they did a good job with it. They did a really good job. And in the trailers, I didn't realize that they're doing an Elton John one too. And I was like, oh, and it's the kid I think who's in The Faculty, the one that's like got the he's not a main character, I guess a supporting character. He's one of the kids that comes up and he's like, hey, do you got any more drugs? It's the guy with the like frizzy hair. I think he's the one who's playing him.
An interesting thing about Brian May is that I went to see the opening of Jurassic Park when it opened those many years ago, and Brian May was there with his girlfriend, which is Anita Dobson. I don't think they ever got married, but Anita Dobson's like a big soap opera star here, and they both had really big hair. And I pity the people that were sitting behind them because they don't anything beyond all that hair.
Block my view, get out of the way. Yeah. Or you take a pair of scissors out and just cut it off.
Yeah. I don't think he ever got rid of his thick hair. His big hair.
It's still there. No, the 70s was good and you stayed. So
one of the best bands ever, though.
I know.
And so what else? Anything else you've been up to?
Not much. I mean, work has been pretty much consuming my life, but I try to like I'm going to New Orleans next week. So
you're such a bitch lately. You're going everywhere.
I have. This is the thing. I haven't been literally traveling probably for the past 2 years, and I kind of was trying to save money, obviously, but then work has been really crazy, and so I said to myself, I need to start taking trips. I've been going to Vermont. I'm going to Vermont again at the end of the.
I love Vermont.
So I can't wait to go again when there's some more snow. So
you should go to Stowe or Brattleboro.
Oh yeah.
Stowe's fabulous.
And Vicki, what have you been up to for the past week?
Well, nursing off and on strep and whatever else comes down the pike. But other than that, I started binge watching The Bates Hotel. I'm not quite into the 5th season yet. Started watching Vampire Diaries and original spinoff called Legacies, like 2nd or 3rd. Trying to get into it. I'm trying to like the new characters. Started watching Riverdale. Been taping that on the CW and doing Shudder. A lot of Shudder lately. Up to that creepy clown on Terrified last night. That was the most fucked up clown I've ever seen. I don't care if the acting was bad. That was a fucked up clown.
The acting was bad, but it had the worst. I've heard the worst. I mean, it looked like a children's Christmas party.
Compared to that one,
the clown was the most hideous, scariest clown, and it haunts you.
It does, the eyes, and it's just like, why does anybody want to sit on his lap, take a fucking selfie?
Because most clowns, even though they're terrifying, there's still like a cuteness quality to them. This one has no cuteness at all to them.
So if you guys get a chance to watch Terrified, it's a really crappy movie, but the clown is fucking badass. Watch it for the fucking clown. But other than that, just getting ready to take Asher Championship Racing in Tulsa.
Nice.
But just doing the family thing. Other than that, we're cool.
Well, I'm working my way through the multiple book reviews that I need to write each month. So that's actually, I've found some really good winners there. So that was quite good. They're on our website at www.podcast.com. If you want to know what we've been up to as far as reading, I finished The Purge is now finished, which I really enjoyed. It was quite enjoyable. And yeah, I mean, I haven't really been into any series of such. I mean, as I said before, last week I finished The Haunting of Hill House, and it is
Sabrina, didn't you?
Sabrina, I finished.
I finished Sabrina too. It's so
Loved
good.
It.
Oh, it's so good. I can't wait for the next.
The Christian church is like losing their fucking mind.
Well, you heard that someone's actually suing them. That the Satanic Church is like suing them because of the statue that's being used. I don't.
That statue's been around since ancient Samaria.
It's like hysterical. And like there's some big balls there to be like coming into the studio to try to sue them for like a satanic representation.
Well, so for an Easter egg for those fans who do watch Sabrina, if you listen to our Suspiria episode, you realize that Suspiria had a part in Sabrina, which if you look at the ceiling of their living room is the Suspiria's living room ceiling. And the doors are all inspired by Suspiria as well. So
I would also say the overtone of red, because obviously she's always wearing red and that,
And Keith still didn't like Hill House. I knew that was coming. Right?
I think it was okay.
I mean,
it's not that I didn't like it. I think it's false advertising per se. I think that I think if they called it something else and
It might have been better.
didn't try to ride on the coattails of Shirley Jackson's, I probably
Right.
would have loved it. But because they rode on the coattails, it just wasn't The Haunting of Hill House. That's
Right.
it. I mean,
I would also say that the ending to it, without giving anything away, was
Right.
very melancholy, and I
Yeah.
thought it built up with such a tension of, oh my god, this is really not going to end well,
I
and
didn't
it
like the
kind of
ending
ends
either.
well, and you're just kind of left like, oh, okay, that's interesting.
I thought it was cinematically done well, and I really
Yeah.
liked the jump scenes. I mean, the bent neck lady, it's like, no way. It's
Yeah, that was
fucked me
great.
up.
That was a
That's
great
what-
tease.
but see, that's where I had some of the problems with some of the cinematography because the house was supposed to be this grand
Right.
finale of a
They
house.
did so much.
And it just kind of felt like it was like this really small, dingy house. You know, I mean, they showed the outside of it, then you kind of
Right.
went the inside, and it's like you only saw a couple rooms. It didn't actually
Yeah.
show the vast scale of the house. And I think that if they had someone who was able to show off the scale of the house, I think it would have made it a bit more for me personally.
Yeah.
My own personal view of it. I mean, overall, I the things I did love about it, as I stated before, is I love the idea that because most of these films, you see the haunting, and you see a house that's haunted, and you go through all the tropes of the hauntings of a house and the characters and how that happens, but you never see the after effect, like years later, what's happened to the family, and that's what I quite liked about the Haunting of Hill
Yeah,
House.
I agree.
That's where I think they got right. But it's also stated there's some ghosts in it that just doesn't make sense. I mean, like the clock.
Well, the floating ghost with the thing, that was another one that creeped me the hell out. The
Well, that
floating guy.
kind of remind me
Ugh.
of remember Life, the game of Life,
Oh yeah.
and the little peg people. He looked like one of those
Yeah.
little peg people.
Well, you know what's interesting is they said that they did an article, they did a BuzzFeed, and it was basically about if you like. I now want to go back, but it said throughout the entire the series is these instances where there's something in the background,
Yeah.
and you just don't notice it. And it's like one of those things where if you go back and you go through all the episodes, there's a ghost in almost every scene when they do the flashback, and you just don't see it, or you're just not privy. You don't peripherally see it. And so I'm
Right.
like, that's kind of brilliant to be able to record that and kind of always stick something in the background that's pretty smart.
I thought that was very well done. I would have liked a bit more history of the house itself. You didn't get too much history, sort of thing. But
Well, I don't think they were trying to copy Jackson's novel. I think, but they were probably kind of.
I think
playing
the
off-
problem basically is if you're going to use the name, the Shirley Jackson name, as the Haunting of Hill House, and basically it has nothing to do outside of character names with the actual source material, then you're kind of ripping the people off. But now the thing is, if they just called it The Haunting and just left it at that, they can have done anything they wanted to with it, and then they can
Right.
made little nods back and forth. I mean, movies have been doing that for years. Whether you see a science fiction film and they'll name like characters after like science fiction writers or something like that, you can get away with it because it's like an ode, it's a homage to it.
Yeah.
But I think when they said there's The Haunting of Hill House and then they advertise it's the story of the Crane family,
Yeah.
and then you realize that this has nothing to do with the Crane family of the Shirley
True.
Jackson novel.
Yeah.
And even the house, it doesn't seem like anything about the house. I mean, the whole Shirley Jackson thing about the house is that, the doors, are always sensibly closed, and all the her directions and descriptions of the house don't even fit what's in the TV series. So they didn't even go that far.
At least they did the Dudleys, I think, a little bit right. Maybe not so much a husband, but definitely the wife was like,
Yeah.
I liked that character.
Then they gave Abigail Crane as the Dudley's daughter.
Yeah.
So it's just little weird things.
Oh,
And
yeah.
as I said before, if it didn't have that name on it, I
thought it had some serious scare value. I liked it.
Yeah.
But you're
I
right.
liked a lot of it actually. And as I said before, it's only because I think with me, it's like I think it was really, really well done. It's just I had the disappointment of it not being the Shirley Jackson's The Haunting of Hill House.
Yeah. I thought also too they
That's
tried
all.
to go this route of almost like an Inception point where it's like very meta when it's the eldest son writes a book called The Haunting of Hill, like
Right.
he literally writes a book, and I thought, are they trying to go that route that it's like what he has written is sort of manifest or come to life, right? And I first thought if they were going to go that route, it would have made more sense if he read the story of Shirley Jackson, and that would have been very interesting to have. Then it's almost like life imitating fiction in some ways. So it's like he's reading a book and going, oh my God, this is our life, right? and then them jumping back, realizing that the story that is the book that has read is sort of like almost like a never-ending story in some ways. Like you're reading something like, oh my God, this is our lives. But when it was him writing the story, I was like, wait, what? And then I was like, oh, it's just him retelling his childhood stories. But I thought, so they're not going to make any reference to Shirley. That's interesting. Like they're not even.
One thing that kind of confused me, because if you didn't watch the very, very, I was lost because I didn't know that they were flashing back in the beginning when I first started watching it between the child life and the adult life. So it kind of confused me there, and I didn't understand about him writing the book. So I had to go back and watch like the first episode and try to absorb it because I was like, I missed something.
It's a little dry, yeah, because you kind of hop back and forth in the beginning. Once you understand, you're like, oh, okay, that's a mechanism that they're doing, going back and forth.
I totally missed it, but boy, we really strayed from the subject, didn't we?
Well, I mean, what I will say though is the acting is very, very well done. I think it's very well acted. I think the script's very good for it. I did enjoy it. The disappointment that goes along with it. And it was good to see E.T. Henry Thomas back again looking old.
Yeah.
Older.
So they put him in those weird contacts too.
I
was like, what the hell with the contacts? The blue contacts is really strange.
Well, when they showed the older version of him, wasn't that Timothy Hutton? Ordinary People? So it's like, so even when he got older, they got another actor for the older part of it as well. So, well, I guess I will bring us back to
our original topic.
John Carpenter's The Thing, which came out in 1982. Now, the interesting thing about The Thing itself is that it was based on, if you listen to last week's podcast episode, of Who's Go There by John W. Campbell, which was written in 1936. And, of course, that became the 1951 cult classic, The Thing from Another World. And because John Carpenter was such a big fan, he would actually include the trailer or the beginning of the film in his classic 1977 film, Halloween. And from there, The Thing would actually start featuring in a lot of Halloween reboots and Halloween films in the background on television sets.
Yeah, I noticed that.
So almost the two would become entwined with each other to a certain effect. Now, the interesting thing about The Thing, that even though it came out in 1938, pre-war, before America got involved in World War II, the story would actually take its roots in that would come later in the 1950s of the McCarthy era, about like who are these people, who do these people really are, and do you know who your neighbors are? And then, of course, that would be manifested into the Invasion of the Body Snatchers, which also holds the same kind of mythos as The Thing does. Now, the interesting thing about the 1982 film, The Thing, is that John Carpenter wasn't the first person who was down to make this film. He came onto it a bit later, which is a bit odd when you consider the fact that he was such love with the film, actually. And another thing is be one of his first big major motion pictures films that he would actually make underneath the studio instead of being an independent film. The Thing would also garnish a lot of love and respect for actors that he would actually start using over and over again, most notably Kurt Russell, which he used Kurt Russell in the Elvis Presley biop that he did for television. And then, of course, Kurt Russell would also do a number of other John Carpenter films later on. And another interesting thing about The Thing is that it's one of the music composed that he did not write. He used another composer, which was Ennio Morricone, which was most famous for The Mission, and he was one of these great big Academy Award-winning composers, film composers. So is there anything you'd like to add, John, about the making of The Thing?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that it was interesting, too, that I read that Carpenter drew parallels between the novella of Agatha Christie as well as, and then there were none. So I thought that was really interesting. Also, he not him, but what's the screenwriter's name? What is his name? Oh, Lancaster wrote. he wrote 30 to 40 pages sort of consecutively for the first act, and he sort of got it down, but then it took him like another like 7 months to write the second half of the act. So I thought that was interesting. He kind of had a block because he felt like the characters, where they were going, he wanted to kind of focus more on the thing than the characters, and realized he was kind of blocked by sort of the dialogue and the action between the characters. So I thought that was very interesting.
The interesting thing about Lancaster is that he was brought on board because John Carpenter was a big fan of the Bad News Bears.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Well, that makes sense because of the banter that kind of happens between the characters. All the characters are involved.
You know when they're playing chess, the talking chessboard?
Oh, yeah.
That was Adrian Barbeau's voice.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Where he eventually like pours the whiskey into the machine. I thought that was
at it.
So, go to hell.
I thought the creature effects were pretty cool. You know that they didn't get anything bad, or like bad reviews for the creature or whatever. But if you go and look at the old reviews, they just thought it was just so damn gross, that they were warning everybody. It was just horrific, and a lot of it was like bubble gum and plastic. And I guess they almost asphyxiated themselves on the set because of all the polymers and all the nasty stuff they had to make, especially where they had for the defibrillator part. Yeah. I guess that had a lot of chemicals involved in that one. They just about damn near blew up the set.
Well, they spent, because out of a $15 million budget, they spent like $1.5 million. Rob Button did on creating these creatures. So it's kind of crazy how much money they put into that.
And the effects, the practical effects, and they pretty much hold up for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Unlike when they did the prequel to The Thing, also called The Thing, so they used CGI in that. There's very few instances where they did actually use practical effects in that. And some of the CGI, considering the year that it came out, are a little bit ropey. We're not as good as what the effects that you see in the 1982 The Thing.
Yeah.
Kind of sad about they said the impact of it was immediate, but he lost his job of directing 1984's the horror film Firestarter because The Thing did not do well at the box office in the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't do well in general because it was like $15 million to make, and it only made 19, almost 20. And
kind of like where it turned into a cult thing more than anything else. I mean, if you're a horror buff, you watch The Thing. I didn't watch the new one yet. Everybody keeps telling me I need to watch the new one, but
I watched
2011. I didn't watch it. Yeah,
2011. I didn't watch it.
I actually watched it. It's actually a good precursor because it's a prequel to The Thing. Mm-hmm. And the interesting thing with if you read the short story Who Goes There, Who Goes There is this odd book. It was about 50 pages long, which is a short story. And from that, they got The Thing from Another World, which relates to the short story. John Carpenter's The Thing also relates to the story, though they're two different films. Also, the prequel to The Thing also brings in aspects of Who Goes There and The Thing, which has nothing to do with the short story. So there these three movies based on this 150-page short story, and how that. But when you look at it, you can see all the bones in the story being presented in all these three different kinds of films.
Right.
Yeah.
But the prequel, The Thing, I think the problem with that basically is because it is a prequel, and I also think that it's beautifully filmed. I mean, the prequel is better filmed than the 1982 The Thing, but I think it has to do with the simple fact that there are things in play there that are not played in 1982, because you do have like a female cast member being added to the proceedings, which causes this whole gender conflict that goes on, which and it wasn't there in The Thing because there was no males and no romantic inclusion. So I think also 1982 film was made in 1982, and things like that were different. And to go and then address these things in an up-to-date film of a prequel that's going to happen just before the 1982 film it's kind of weird, because then what you have is you got two films that have two different political agendas to them, and they don't mash. Now, I think if they stuck to the 1982 political agenda and carry that through in the prequel, I think you can get away with it. The interesting thing is, though, it does end with the dog running away, as the 1982 film starts with the dog running into the
and then they're chasing.
Oh, okay. So the 2011 is a prequel to that movie then.
It's a prequel.
Oh,
yeah.
It's very interesting because that sort of goes into line as we start to talk about the film. It goes into line sort of like I thought to myself that the characters had been different, because it's almost as if, you know, they took the novella and that scene of where, you know, it crashes or it's there and they're discovering the thing and then they're defrosting the thing and then a thing attacks. I thought, it's them the aftermath of that. And I thought, well, then why did they use the characters from the book? Like, I thought if they made all new characters and it was sort of, this was the aftermath of the original, then that would have made more sense. But now that makes more sense that they kind of did that than 2011. They told that story and then caught up to that.
I thought it was funny about the dog, Jed. I think that was the dog's name, Jed. And I guess he used to creep everybody out because he'd sit there. He was part wolf, but apparently the dog would just sit there and watch you, and everybody would just say, "Don't move."
Well, it was good. It must have been really good in command, because if you watch the film, the dog had this really interesting, it almost like a human quality. It would
never worked with humans really.
It was really weird, though. So strange.
I mean, the interesting thing about the 2011 is that when the 1982, when the cast goes to the original Norwegian site and you see all the demolition of the place and all the, you know, things that they do show you, the 2011 actually shows you how it actually happened.
Was it the Norwegians in the 2011 version? And that's why the dog, because I've often wondered why they were chasing the dog in the beginning with the helicopter.
Yeah, it's the Norwegians chasing down the dog to make sure that the thing doesn't escape, because they got to make sure it doesn't get into.
Okay, I was wondering, because they don't really explain that, so that makes perfect sense.
So, no, and that's what I mean. It's sort of interesting because you're the driver of this story is that dog who gets there, and then they're kind of like, well, why are these people trying to kill this dog? Because they obviously speak a different language. They don't understand what they're trying to say to them.
Right.
And then it's like, well, let's go find out. And then they go to this campsite that's all abandoned, destroyed. And so there's a huge story there. You're like, what's going on? What happened here? They go into that room and there's like an ice block that sort of, you know, something was in there and they didn't know. The only thing I didn't like was like the back and forth. So they go back to the camp and then they talk about it some more and they review a tape and then let's go out again and let's go to like, so there's this like weird back and forth of like, let's go back out again and figure out what they were looking for, you know, and then as opposed to it being near wherever the site was, because I felt like everything was far away. Because when they're on the plane, they're like, it's 2 hours from here or it's 30 minutes from here, and I was like, well, how far is it? Like, how it thought everything was like kind of close by, you know.
I think that if you're going to actually watch the prequel to the thing, the 2011, I suggest watching 2011 and then watching the 1982.
I'm gonna have to watch it this weekend now because now I'm curious.
Yeah, and that's how I viewed it, because I was given the thing free on Blu-ray quite a few years ago, and I watched it. It wasn't anything too highly of it. Then anticipation, I thought, okay, I'm going to watch it again. I'm going to follow it in the proper sequence, and I actually did enjoy it more this time. I mean, it's not down as one of my favorite all-time films, but it's enjoyable and it's quite interesting. Then watch it lead into the 1982 film. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut to a commercial break and the trailer for The Thing.
Amazon is here to make your life easier. By just the tap of a button, you can turn the camera on your phone to your own personal shopping list. Introducing Flow. Just tap the camera icon onto the search bar and you can find whatever it is you're looking for, right on Amazon. Faster than scanning a barcode and typing the name of your item into the search engine. Besides, searching with words is so 2012. Save time and money. Amazon, where shopping meets effortless.
Mayday. Anyone hear me? Oh. This is U.S. Station 31. You read me? Found something in the ice. We need some help down here. Can anybody hear me? We found something. We found something. We found something.
12 men have just discovered something. For 100,000 years, it was buried in the snow and ice. Now it has found a place to live. Inside. Where no one can see it, or hear it, or feel it.
I know I'm human. Some of you are still human. This thing doesn't want to show itself. It wants to hide inside an imitation. It'll fight if it has to, but it's vulnerable out in the open. If it takes us over, then it has no more enemies. Nobody left to kill it. And then it's won.
You guys gonna listen to Gary? He can beat one of those things!
At the start of a girls' night out, if you saw a dirty pavement, would you crawl along it? Would you squat down by the curb and pee into the gutter? Would you take a breather when lying in some sick? Would you get your breasts out for every passing car? Would you tear your best mate's hair out 'cause you fancy the same bloke? Would you accept a lift from a man who you've just met? Would you do it with a guy whose name you can't remember? Would you? You wouldn't start a night like this, so why end it that way? Alcohol. Know your limits.
Welcome back. Before we get started, Vicky, do you want to give a brief synopsis of the 1982 film The Thing?
Yes, in remote Antarctica, a group of American research scientists are disturbed at their base camp by a helicopter shooting at a sled dog. When they take in the dog, it brutally attacks both human beings and canines in the camp, and they discover that the beast can assume the shape of its victims. A resourceful helicopter pilot, Kurt Russell, and the camp doctor, Richard Dysart, lead the camp crew in a desperate, gory battle against the vicious creature before it picks them off one by one.
And so, John, do you want to start the discussion of the film?
Sure. I mean, it's interesting that, you know, as we were talking before about the 2011, it's actually now I really want to see this movie because I think I was a little frustrated at the beginning of this film because it does throw you into the story fairly quickly because when you see, you know, the wolf or I guess the husky running across and you're at first I was kind of like, what is happening? And then when they start throwing bombs out of the helicopter to kind of kill this dog, I was like, what the what? And I'm like, I'm assuming, you know, I'm like, they really want that dog dead, right? And then you kind of get into the story. I always try to remove myself from what I have read or a previous incarnation of something like this. So imagining if I've never ever knew what the thing was about, and you kind of see a trailer, if you will, like, oh, this is about an alien thing. Like, it's kind of at first like, what the hell is going on? And then once you kind of get into it, it goes very quickly into the story after the, you know, the husky's there, and then they go research where this dog came from, and then they kind of realize something's going on. It's like it does move along fairly quickly, and I like that about this film because I'm used to this long buildup of the creature and what it is and stuff, and you're kind of just really thrown into there, especially once the alien is revealed. You're like, oh god, and now it's now moving, and it's usually one person sees it, and then it's that person trying to convince everyone else, like, hey, something's going on. No, everyone witnesses what's going on, and it's sort of like, what do we do now? You know, and I actually love the science behind it too, because there's more an explanation immediately at the beginning of this versus it taking, well, we don't really know. And so you have a scientist who is giving the exposition of like, oh, well, this is what the organism is. And they kind of dissect it. And it's just really disgusting and gross seeing where they're like literally tearing it apart. Ugh.
I know, it was gross. That's what they said. They said it was really on the gross factor. You know, they said you might not like the movie, but it was on a major gross factor. So
I would also say, if you don't know what this is, would you, I mean, I asked both of you, would you ever like stick your hands in that thing? I don't give a crap. Ugh.
Well, actually,
when the guy was doing the autopsy, no, fuck
yeah.
I mean,
because it had like teeth and stuff, and I was like, no, how do you know this is dead? Like, seriously?
Well, it was a vagina with teeth, so trust me.
I really did. That's what it looked like?
It looked like what is it called? The plants. The
Venus flytrap.
Yeah, it looked like a Venus flytrap. I was like, oh.
I mean, I had viewing the film. It's one of those films that I actually didn't take much note in it. I remember it coming out. It came out on video, and I remember seeing the video and wasn't too enthused by it. Only because I think it was back in the day when there were videotapes and there was a lot of pan and scanning going on with a film of this type. And I know that's one of favorites of a lot of friends of mine. But I have to say now, after I've done Who Goes There and I've saw where it's come from, and I actually watched it this time around, I actually have a lot more appreciation for it. And I actually appreciate the relationships of the men in the compound itself. I thought they were really well drawn out, and it has quite a strong script. So even though some of the practical effects sometimes don't play as well to a modern audience, if you take those practical effects out, you still have a pretty good strong script. So it doesn't all hinge on the special effects of everything. And I quite like that, the testing situation about how they would test to see who might have been infected by the thing or not, which actually the X-Files in an episode called Ice would actually use the same thing when they would need to find out who's infected by using electricity against the blood. So I quite liked a lot of the thing. I quite think it works very, very well.
Yeah.
It was definitely a struggle of the human condition and major paranoia. It was just like the most paranoid group of people in any movie you'll ever see. Just like you didn't know who was who. And
yeah,
they were all paranoia. It was all about paranoia.
Well, it's also too, like, once they really understand the severity of the situation, because you have a dog that's infected by something, right? And it's transformed. Once they understand it's like a human can do the same thing as when that instance where they know, I forget which character it was, like the first one that they notice is something is happening. It's literally like they all look at each other like, okay, I don't know what you are or who you are anymore. Because like they believed, it's like the illusion is now gone that this person was what they were, and all of a sudden they're not.
Clark, the dog handler, that noticed everything first.
Yeah. Oh.
I mean, the interesting also thing that I found is that it's not actually brought up in the thing, but if you read the actual source material where it's come from, it actually is hinted on the 2001, is that the thing is also telepathic. So therefore it can pick up people's mind thoughts and stuff like this. So that's how it can actually replicate itself on a personality level. Why it would make it more difficult. And realizing that when I watched that, it actually made a lot more sense, because I thought, well, you can actually replicate the way someone looks, but how do you replicate how someone acts? And that became a bit more clear. It's like, okay, that does make a lot of more sense.
And quickly too, because like the scene where one of them is like transforming, it transforms very quickly. And that's, I think, special effects that way. Like it's amazing how they were able to, at that time, be able to pull something like that off, because usually they spend a lot of time angling and showing the special effects in a very slow way, which makes it feel like the transformation takes an hour. Like this, it felt like minutes, if not seconds of this transformation. So you can kind of say there's logic in, okay, now I could see how this thing can get away with going and morphing into this, these different people so quickly.
I also kind of wonder what would happen if, because you are left with the ending, spoiler alert, that you had quite an ambiguous ending. And so you have to put your faith in that Kurt Russell hasn't been turned. I would say
that he is fine. However, the other guy who disappears and comes back, I would totally would have.
There's a couple theories on that. You know how John Carpenter said, and he came on in an interview. I was watching some interviews. Like, if you looked at somebody and they captured the light in your eyes, where you see the light in their eyes, then you were still a human. Remember in there, I don't know why it cracks me up every time when they're all still stuck together in the fucking chair, and he starts turning after he checks the blood.
Oh yeah. He's like, get me out of this chair. Get me out of this chair. I would be the same way. Like, get me out.
The fucking chair. They're trying to get loose. But the guy did not have any lights in his eyes. And if you're looking towards the end, spoilers kind of sort of, at the end when Kurt Russell offers him the alcohol, that it could be like part of a Molotov cocktail, because that's what he was killing them with. He was shooting bottles, and he's sitting there. If you take it one way or another, well, we'll sit here and wait, and see what happens. because he gave him he could have given him petrol and he wouldn't know he was drinking it because he's an alien. He also didn't have lights in his eyes. But, and they had 50 different, but they did all these conspiracy theories about who was what. But John Carpenter did say that one of them was the Thing. And some people tried to say that it might have been Kurt Russell throughout the whole movie, trying to gain everybody's, trust.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you just got to take it as you want it. But towards the end, if you look, unless he's got a little bit of lazy eye, you can't see any light in that particular character's eyes when the two at the end. And
apparently it was the Blair character, right? Because he was kind of locked away building the ship and all that.
He was the guy that took off chasing Norris, maybe, was it? Or was that, I don't know. But he went off chasing him. He was gone. He came back and he had been totally changed. He left in, I believe, what was blue snowsuit. Then he comes back and it's khaki kind of green. And when that thing erupts out of your body, sort of like Alien, it's going to fuck up all your clothing. Yeah. And they don't really explain why he had different, clothing on.
Yeah.
So,
and then wasn't his clothing found or something? They
found Kurt Russell's clothing.
Yeah. So that could have been like a sabotage thing, or maybe it really was. He did change, and maybe that was,
Yeah, I mean, they just leave it up to you. But John Carpenter say it was one of the two, or they could have been both of them.
I mean, let's face it. I mean, Kurt Russell's hairdo. I mean,
I thought he looked great. Hey, I thought he was hot in that movie. I don't care.
Well, I'm just saying that's a lot of high maintenance hairdo. I mean, you need a hairdresser for that hairdo.
He said it took a year for him to grow that beard and that hair just to do that role.
But even to keep the hair looking the way it did, I mean, maybe it was the Thing, because I mean, you need a hairdresser to maintain that hair.
Exactly.
Leave Kurt alone.
I mean, I think it's one of these films that has a fantastic cast, though. Every single actor in this is well cast.
They are.
Yeah. And I think that, that works out very, very well. I mean, you got Wilford Brimley, who's fantastic, who now, advertises diabetes and
he does
on television. But don't we even have
Richard Masur?
Yeah.
And the Babe actors in there as well, isn't he?
Yeah, Keith David.
Got the thing here. And I have to say it's a fantastic cast and stuff like that. T.K. Carter, which he would end up becoming a name in a lot of straight to video sort of stuff. Mm-hmm. And David Moffat as well. I mean, he's fantastic. But I've had to say it's really well cast, and he's done a great job. And it looks like one of those films where I think everyone was quite involved in the whole proceedings of the making of the film. It seemed like they were quite a close-knit bunch of people.
It was smart, because one of the changes that was made was that, it was like 37 people versus the 12, and they deliberately they skimmed it down because of that, being able to have them have the dialogue they needed to have to build the kind of the relationships of each of the characters. And you kind of felt that. You didn't feel as though, you have, yes, of course, like Russell's character has more sort of screen time than the rest of them. But like for the most part, each of them sort of play off of each other. You get to know each one of the characters and kind of invest a little bit of the character. So when something does happen to them or they become a thing, it's like, oh, there goes another one. You're like, oh, there goes another one,
And it kind of worked, no offense, people or ladies, but it kind of worked keeping the female element out of it.
It would have been hard to introduce that, because it would have been, unless you made her like sort of a warrior princess, like she was coming into.
Right. Because when you watch the old version of The Thing from Another Planet, they had that little romantic interlude kind of thing going on in it, but I don't think it would have translated well into this version anyway.
Well, I think what you would have is then I think what you probably would end up doing, like the 2011 film did, is you have the final girl scenario happening.
Yeah.
So, she'll either be a girl that needed to be saved or a girl that would be saving herself. It's gonna be one or the other. Right. Russell saving her.
Or she's the brains, right? She's the one who's a scientist who's like analyzing what's going on and telling them, giving them the expedition of the, like, here's what's happening. This is what the creature is. And here's what you got to watch out for,
Yeah.
And that's pretty much what you have at the 2011 prequel, is you have the female playing that role sort of thing.
Yeah.
But then you have that 2011 spin where it's the girl who's got all the brains, and she ends up becoming Xena, the warrior princess, saving the day sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I think in 1982, if you do look at female roles in science fiction outside of Sigourney Weaver in Alien, what you tend to do is have the final girl scenario, and that's how most of these films would play. The Jamie Lee Curtis Halloween, or the Adrienne Kings in the Friday the 13th, or the final in the Nightmare on Elm Street. And at that time, you got to remember the slasher films were all the rage in 1982.
Definitely.
And it's probably one of the reasons why the 1982 The Thing did not do as well as performed, because people wanted their slasher horrors. That was the big money makers.
Yeah.
But, I think we discussed it in the last podcast with Steve and Nicholas, and we were saying that a lot of these 80 films don't really hold up to today. Where look at the cult films of the day, like Blade Runner, The Thing,
right?
And they're the films that actually hold up. But no one wants to see Arthur again.
No,
exactly. That's terrible. I loved that version of Arthur though with Dudley Moore. That was just like,
well, comedy shtick, so even if it has like a sci-fi element. I was just watching All of Me, remember, with Lily Tomlin and Steve Martin, and it's a little sci-fi, right? But it's like those sci-fi comedies are just like they fade into the background and you never see them.
But it's still funny though.
Yeah.
I mean, but another thing, I guess, if you do have a science fiction film that's either set in the future or you can't actually the only thing that you can age here is probably Kurt Russell's hair in The Thing. But there's nothing else that you can. There's not.
That's Kurt's hair.
But I'm saying
it's a thing.
But there's nothing else in this film to actually age it, really. It's maybe, not the story, the way it looks, where a lot of 80s films, unfortunately, they have that 80s they kind of have, now they look like straight to video quality about them. And when you look at Blade Runner or The Thing or other films like that, they do feel timeless. They don't feel like they're set in a time period.
Yeah. Well, it's also the technology up. If you were, let's say, go to Antarctica, is it like the most modern technology? Probably not, because it's like, depending on the facility, if it's like a strong research facility, then yes, it probably would have the latest and greatest. But some of those places had they may do. Like their job was just to be there, report back and communicate, like that type of thing. So they didn't need, the best of technology. I can picture imagine in that sort of environment, and in today's, they try to remake something like that. You could have someone sitting there with a Game Boy, playing a Game Boy, which was in the 80s, and it's like, would they be sitting there with the latest and greatest iPhones? Like, hey, we're going to, be that tech savvy? No, because it kind of adds to that rusticness of it all. And I also just think of communication that way. Like if everyone did have phones and computers and that, it's like, it kind of takes you out of the moment of the isolation, which is what four guys they're stuck together. And it's like, you can't, it's not like if you found out one of us was like, an alien, you can't just run out in the middle of sub-zero temperatures and be like, I'm going to leave. See y'all later. Like you kind of have to be like, I'm here. Like, where do I go?
Yeah, there's nowhere to go.
Yeah.
The only thing that really dates the 1982 version of The Thing is basically Kurt Russell's hair.
Get off Kurt's hair.
And
leave Vicky alone. I'm sure she has a Kurt Russell hair foundation of.
I just think Kurt's
fan club.
But I guess it would be the computer animation of the virus itself, and Wilford Brimley's looking at the virus and how it's actually clones itself, and very, very seldom some of the special effects, but it's very, very seldom. Most of the special effects do play off. They haven't aged at all. They do. There's a couple of two instances, the part where the guy getting his hands cut off by the vagina.
That was a guy that had been in an industrial accident.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't have arms. And what they did was they said he was a fabulous guy when they were doing the defibrillator scene where the arms go in there and the Venus flytrap comes and cuts his arms off. That individual that they even put a fake face on him, rubber mask to make him look like that actor. That guy, I guess he was a real, nice guy because he went in there and they had like rubber arms and stuff, and with the veins and the crap and just the nasty pirate thing, whatever things they were doing. It was really gross and authentic looking. But when they clamped when he went down and his hands went through his chest cavity and that thing came in and clamped on him and broke the arms in half, and the blood started spurting up and everything. That guy actually did not have. He had his arms amputated, and that's what they used for that.
That's one of, and also if you ever look up, if you just go on YouTube and like shocking sci-fi horror scenes, that is one of the biggest like
That's
scary, because you don't expect it. It's like let's go save him, and like literally his arms get pulled. You're like, what the hell?
I mean, his whole chest cavity caves in, and then his neck starts stretching out. I guess that's the scene they almost caught the whole place on fire because they were like, they wanted more fire.
Yeah, let's talk about the fire thing, because they would immediately put something on fire and then put it out. Wouldn't you let it slightly burn a little bit to make sure you killed whatever was in the room?
I think that they were having too much fun with the O2 canisters there.
Yeah.
They were just
seriously. And then, the scene where, the one guy, his head literally comes off and becomes like a separate thing. I'm like, did none of you
just like scooching around like the spider?
Yeah, and I was like, did none of you see this? And then like eventually it's like they turn around and it's like this awkward moment where they all just kind of like turn around and go,
what the fuck?
And it's like literally behind them walking away, and then they're like catch it on fire. And I was like, okay, so they did see the thing. Because
that one.
Just like noticing this big spider head monster thing that's walking out of the room.
Well, I also found that there wasn't a lot of thought process in the whole using a fire thing. I can understand that you want to get rid of the monster and everything like that. But at the same time, fire consumes. It can't be controlled.
Right.
Yeah, it gets the point is like, even if they killed the thing at the end of the day, none of these people are going to survive, because all they would need is a good snowstorm to come in and they're all going to freeze to death, because they were burning that house, they're burning that place down left, right, and center, to the point where it's just like there's no room safe. I mean, they would burn something, the walls catch on fire. They burn something else, the ceiling caught on fire, to the point where it's just kind of like whole devastation.
Yeah.
And you think that, I guess most people would actually go in the blind panic and probably not think these things through, which actually works well within the confines of the film. But, afterthought, when you're thinking about it, is like, you kill the thing and now you're out there in the middle of nowhere going, fuck, I'm going to freeze to death.
Yeah.
Maybe it would have been better to be taken over by that thing, because I don't like being cold. I mean, I'm sorry, but if I'm like shivering to death is probably worse than drowning for me.
Well, wouldn't you like, and this at one point, like you said, it kind of is, their concern is let's save the facility. And then at one point it's like the generators go down, and then it's like, fuck the facility. And now we're burning it down and blowing it up. I was like, wouldn't you just isolate yourself somewhere and say, okay, the thing froze before. It was frozen before. It will have to freeze again. It's got nowhere warm to go but here. So you just protect that one sanctuary.
But that was the whole point, though. Everybody was so paranoid at this point that there was no common sense going on. Yeah. It was all full-blown paranoia.
You can also say that's also partially cabin fever too, right? Because up in there, you have to have cabin fever because you have nowhere else to go. So you entertain yourself. There were, you notice all of them were doing something like playing games, smoking pot.
Yeah.
There's a scene where the guy like lights up a doobie, and I was like, well, when in Antarctica, you have to have things that keep you active mentally, because otherwise you lose your mind. Now throw them into that scenario and you're completely bonkers after that.
I imagine that everyone that you're working with is going to get terribly on your nerves, because I know that if I got stuck living and breathing with the people I worked with 24 hours a day, after a couple of weeks, I probably would actually just started murdering them myself.
Weeks, try days. Usually, the giving is like 5 days. If you ever, go on any sort of trip with someone, friends or family, after 5 days, you want to kill each other because you're all isolated together,
I mean, the good thing about the thing is it's actually the first installment of what's considered John Carpenter's Apocalypse trilogy, which basically, the thing is number one, Prince of Darkness, 1987, and In the Mouth of Madness in 1995. Which, let's just sit there and say, the Apocalypse trilogy wasn't a huge moneymaker.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't remember that.
Yeah. So, but I do remember that PlayStation 2 came out with the Thing game, which I remember playing that, which is quite
I saw that there was a game, and I was like curious about that, like what it was like. Was it like an adventure role play type game, or
more like survival horror?
Interesting.
It kind of worked on the same thing as, the Thing would actually give rise to other computer games anyway. If you look at well, actually The Thing, of course, but there's also a lot of type changing. Was the Dark Space?
Oh yeah. Dead Space.
Dead Space. The Dead Space trilogy gives a lot to The Thing about what and so it could also actually be part of the whole Thing atmosphere about where it is in space and how it takes over. And it turns
like Alien, because Alien did Isolation, which is all that you're kind of trapped on this space station with an alien,
right,
and trying to survive.
Yeah, and another thing, The Thing did give rise to a couple of science fiction horror films that are actually called classics today from the 80s. You had the movie The Hidden, which had Kyle MacLachlan in it, which is a fantastic film, which carries on this whole thing. And of course, the film that we're going to be discussing later, The Faculty, gives a lot of nods towards The Thing. And
right.
Body Snatchers and The Breakfast Club. But
Riverdale did The Breakfast Club the other day. I better not say. Too many people are watching Riverdale, so.
The Riverdale Breakfast Club episode was fantastic. So, but the thing is, I think it's one of those films that I think is going to stand the test of time. I said before, it was fortunately for The Thing that it came out, didn't do well, but it came out during the video rental boom that was happening around 1982, which it did find its audience. A lot of films found this boom during that time.
I wouldn't even know
like Night of the Comet and
Blockbuster. What a thing of the past that has become.
I know. Yeah.
I remember running to Blockbuster. Let's get some movies for the weekend. Blockbuster.
The true test to anyone who is a geek, if your first job was a video store, you probably that was me. I was a video store.
Yeah, me too. Latin record stores, two places I used to work.
What was the name of that record store in the Walmart in the mall in Wilbur? Do you remember that?
I worked at Record Giant in Watertown, but there was Hastings Record.
Was that the one in the little mall? Was that Record Giant?
No, Record Giant was the one that was where Radio Shack is in Watertown now.
Was it Virgin?
That's where I worked.
Virgin was a record store, and then there was also, oh my God, what was the other one?
Well, it also depends on what area of the country you're living in.
True.
In Tulsa, when I was going to college, I worked at Hastings Records, and I moved to a big record store called Buttons, which was,
they just closed their last Hastings not too long ago here in Texas.
And then I at one point in the UK we had HMV, and we also had Virgin, and I think Borders used to sell stuff as well. But now, all those places are kind of dead and dried up. Now you have to kind of know what you're looking for.
Yeah.
Fall upon something. And I think the video store was quite good about being able to discover new things, because you'd go in,
Sam Goodies. That's the one I was thinking of.
Sam Goodies, yes. But, I quite like that kind of aspect of it, because if I was, when I used to buy DVDs or Blu-rays a bit more, even music, or renting, I would go in and look at the box, and then I would take chances. I was like, okay, and another thing is, because you go in and like the big blockbuster that you wanted for, especially like on a Friday, would be gone.
Right.
You go for second choices and stuff like this. And so you would open your mind up to stuff that you never would normally open your mind to.
The new release wall in the red boxes.
Well, and the big one for LA or in Hollywood was Tower Records, which I loved.
Yeah, we had Tower Records here as well. And it was in UK. But, I think things are a bit different now, because another thing that you used to have like these special deals, didn't you, at the times? Like you can I think it was either $5 or $10 for the weekend. And you can, it'd be like 3 to 4 films for the whole weekend. And so you go through and you pick out your 3 or 4 films, and then you take those home. Now it's kind of like you have to take a chance, and each download is going to cost you about $4.99 if you wanted an HD, or $3.99 if you wanted it.
Or if you're on Amazon Prime, $2.99, $3.99.
And unless you go to the simple fact that Netflix is quite good, but there's more newer stuff. It's very rare that you'll see more culty kind of stuff. So you kind of need. Shudder. There are other platforms out there nowadays like Shudder and Shock TV and other things that you can buy a monthly membership for. But I think the days of video and like finding a film that didn't become a huge classic, finding that cult classic. It's a bit different now, I think.
But you're right, though. That was the boom back then. And that was probably very, opportune.
I feel like there is a resurgence, though, with platforms like Shudder. Tubi is one that use all the time. I wish that this was actually on there. I rented the thing from iTunes, but it gives room for anyone who wants to create a media aggregated content site, like to do a sci-fi like sort of one, like to resurgence these types of movies that like people would watch, like, and give it new breath, and I think that's how these type of movies get revitalized.
I also think it was easier to actually scan through a video store and find stuff to watch. I find that, like, if I'm looking for something on Netflix, let's say I'm bored and it's like, okay, I want to watch something. By the time I go through Netflix and go through everything, I got to the point where like an hour and a half has been wasted, and it's like I figured I don't want to watch.
You could have watched a movie.
I could have watched something, and I was like, no, I'm not going to watch anything now, sort of thing. And I do that a lot. I find.
I do that.
What's interesting though is I think what they need to figure out, and maybe it's a 2-screen experience that you have, on your home, whatever device, Apple TV. Right. And you're watching Netflix, is that they should create a second screen for your phone to kind of let you peruse other things while you're kind of watching something, because we always, we're different in the sense that we're not always just watching something. We're always on our phone or on our computer, or we're doing like multiple things. But I think for Netflix, you're right. You could spend an hour and a half trying to find something versus like, let me just put this on and let me just watch this in the background. And let's peruse and see if there's something better to watch. Like
I like the option on the phone to cast to your TV. I just like,
I'll
watch this.
AirPlay or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, I have to say with my Shudder account, what I've done actually is I've gone through every single movie and added into a favorites. I put them into a favorites thing, and now it's like, okay, I want to watch something. I'll just go through my favorites thing. It's like, okay, here I go.
I've got a list.
Which at the moment I'm watching.
Do you find yourself like me, like I'll put something on a list and be like, Mom, not now. Maybe like I'll literally like, I'll save that for this day or whatever. Like I'll add something and be like, yeah, I don't feel like watching that right now. I want to, but not right now.
Oh yeah, I mean, I got quite a few little Shudder TV series on there that I haven't even started. I'm saying that I'm almost done with Masters of Horror, which is quite.
I haven't started.
Oh, I'm literally on like episode 5 of the first season because I started watching. You guys liking
it? I haven't started it yet.
It's interesting. It's hit or miss. Some of the episodes are weird and some of them are great.
I mean, it's a bit like any kind of anthology series. You do have your, you have your ones that stick out and you have your ones that don't. I mean, the good thing about Masters of Horror is that you do have fantastic directors. I think I'm on the John Carpenter's Cigarette Burns. That's what I'm on at the moment.
Oh, okay.
But I quite like the Toby Hopper one. I quite enjoyed that a little bit. I think the best one's probably the Stuart Gordon, the Witch House one. I quite like that because he did Reanimator, because I quite like his films. And the first one about the woman in the car crash.
Oh yeah, that was good.
That was really good. And the Dario Argento one was quite good as well. It had a lot of those Dario Argento flourishes to it. So, but yeah, I mean, it is an anthology series, and it does, these anthology series, whether it's Tales from the Dark Side or Tales from the Crypt or Twilight Zone or The Hitchhiker or whatever anthology series is around, they are hit and miss. Some of them are fantastic. Some of them don't really hit the mark, and then some of them are okay. Sort of
like when we're going to cover Trilogy of Terror.
I can't wait. I haven't seen that so long.
I can't wait.
That movie scared the shit out of me. That little dude, that little. You're that little. That fucked me up when I was a kid.
Oh please! It was so tiny. Oh, you
I don't care. I was scared. I was a scared stone teenager. My friends would sit there and make that sound when I was going to the bathroom. It's like, you assholes.
And let's face it, no one can wear black eyeliner like Karen Black.
Absolutely.
No.
But I think going back to the thing, I think the thing works on a lot of levels. I think it's a very, very strong script, and I think it's the only problem I find with some of John Carpenter's films is that there is a flat look to them.
Oh, that's true.
There's never like an in-depth look. I think I never really noticed it before. I mean, I like Halloween. I think Halloween's a good film. I'm not a huge lover of the Michael Myers films. I like Halloween because it started off. But if I was going to pick a slasher genre, it'd probably be Friday the 13th. For some reason, they're stupid films, but I love those films. So I do give my nod to John Carpenter's Halloween because he started that craze. Without Halloween, you wouldn't have Friday the 13th. But I do find with John Carpenter's films, they always have kind of a flat look to them. That's the only thing. And I noticed that more when I was watching the 2011 The Thing in HD, and then I watched The Thing, the 1982 in HD. And there is a flatness to his films. And I watched a couple other ones as well, and they do. I think it's the film stock that he prefers, but everything just feels a bit two-dimensional when you're watching it on the screen. The scripts are not two-dimensional. The characters aren't two-dimensional, but the film itself.
Well, he also likes to film really close up because there's something about, he said something about personal space. When you have too much space in the background, it gives it doesn't, what this movie is trying to do is make you focus on isolation. So when you're tight, close on characters, you feel like you know what's around that person. So you feel like you're isolated as well. So he's mentioned in the past, the reason why he does a lot of tight scenes is because he doesn't want the added space to make you feel comfortable. He wants you to feel that cramped feeling, that the character is feeling,
Makes sense.
But that's why it gives a level of 2D, because you're kind of really tight in the scene and you don't have the foreground that gives the depth of the scene.
I do think he does give his actors room to breathe and act, though. I my hats are off to them. And I think that with a John Carpenter film, that what you do get actors who are acting their asses off. And I do think and he always has strong scripts. I mean, I know that he puts his fingers into the scripts and he does do a lot of work with the scripts, but I think that his scripts are always quite strong.
Yeah.
I just think sometimes the exposition doesn't come as strong as the scripts do.
One of my favorite scenes in the thing was when Wilford Brimley is like having a fit and like destroying that room, because it's just like everyone is trying to like stop him. And he's just going off, like literally shooting people, takes an axe, and he's like, and then like my favorite part is when they finally like kind of get him and like knock him out. It's that fake punch down. It's like it's like
I just don't think when they're all stuck to the couch. I watched that. I had to watch that and roll it back 2 or 3 times because it's just funny watching all them guys on the couch just going nuts because they're all like stuck there.
Well, when they're testing too, I do have to say, yes, it's smart that he figured out the whole testing thing, but I'm like, what if that got on you? Because at one point when it jumps out of the Petri dish, I would have learned from that one situation and been like, okay, so not going to do that now. I'm going to hold it like this out here and, like hit it. Yeah.
I mean, some of the questions I had also raised for myself is that how many cells, could one cell just get into your pores and just take you over? Or did it
think it didn't take much. I mean, it just seemed like just petting the dog seemed to have,
I think that it had to, but even in the novella, it had to like consume you in order to like transform you.
True. Yeah, you're right. It did have to assimilate you because through all the reviews and all the research, we're all assimilated.
Bless you.
God bless you.
Thank you. But another thing is though that if you saw like when they were doing the blood testing and they actually showed the cells replicating, and that was only like 1 or 2 cells that they used, and it was able to replicate that quickly.
Right.
So sometimes I kind of wondering that if maybe it only takes a couple blood splatters for actually to go, maybe like one in your eye or something like that. I mean, it's possible.
Well, it's that, and it's also, remember, it like kind of not to get gross, but like secreted something and like shot it at the dogs, and it was like and like sprayed it all over them, and then the dogs started like melting, or like it was really weird. So I was like,
that's not the part. I don't mind seeing humans die, but I hate it when they kill fucking dogs. It's like I could take anything except killing dogs. It's like nothing.
And the dogs were trying to get out. I mean, they were really trying to get out.
Shit, they're trying to get out of that cage. And
nothing's worse than a vagina with teeth spitting at you. No, I mean, yeah. I mean, I think a lot of KY jelly was used in this film to make.
Oh, it was so. Ugh. It was like
slimy. But
they used a lot of bubble gum. They said they used a lot of bubble gum.
But I did have some questions, just some simple fact about, because the thing is they would burn it, but you never knew how much of it was still alive to go to jump somewhere else. So you never actually knew that side of it. So I didn't know if it was, I mean, I know that a lot of film historians and people who like to tear friends apart, and tear friends apart, and look for like social significance in the and what it actually all means, and allegorize it all.
Right.
The Thing is an allegory for HIV and AIDS because it jumps from person to person, and you never know who has it, you don't know who it is, and all this sort of thing. And
paranoia. That's what I'm saying. Paranoia.
Yeah. Well, me, I look at it more, as I said before, in the previous episode, I was quite shocked that Who Goes There, the original source material, came out in the 50s. I'm surprised it came out in 1938 because it does seem like a McCarthyized system about, you don't know who these people are, they can turn against you, and all this sort of thing, which it comes out before that.
In a small community.
Kind of forerun it.
But I think it's also that, when you go that far back, when it comes to sci-fi, that's where it goes back to the trope of when you think of sci-fi, it is, the what if, what if a man was dating a woman and the woman turned out to be a robot, right? So it's that throwing that what if element, like what if, this alien infects you and this is what happens. And it makes you ask all these questions. Now, whether or not you get all the answers, it's left to the director, I guess, the writer to give you those answers. Part of sci-fi, you almost have to have enough to be able to have it plausible and believable. If it's not plausible and believable, that's where you kind of break away from the sci-fi element because you don't explain it enough, or there's not enough a degree of explanation.
I think when I look at all these film historians and stuff like that talking about certain things, I do sometimes think that I really don't think John Carpenter goes, let's sit there and say that they're right. I don't think he's that wrong. Goes, let's do an HIV allegory film based on a science fiction film. We'll call it The Thing. Yeah, I don't think it works that way, and I don't think that ever crossed anyone's mind.
Only yours.
Well, and there was also no
because I was actually reading some stuff online, and that's when it popped up, and then I started listening to a couple other podcasts that do cover films, and they kind of look for that secret message in films, and it came up again, and I'm not sure if they read it. I don't know if they came up with it themselves, it's because they read it off another website and they were perpetrating that, but. I don't think it's quite interesting when
for any reason like any of the characters had, if there was another character that there was a sexual interaction or there was more of a visceral thing that is more, it had to go in your mouth or it had to do something like basically that way. I think you could take it as a sexual, exactly. One of the doggy arms or whatever.
The vagina with teeth spitting phlegm at you.
Well, but I have to say that also there was this, I also read this thing online about that The Thing is actually about women empowerment, that was the men's fear of the vagina because the thing looks like a vagina with teeth. and it's like, and if you look, there are term papers and we're not talking about like a couple of paragraphs written here. We're talking about full-fledged like reports. Quite thick. I think someone wrote a 50-page report about this for the movie The Thing, which I find quite interesting. I don't know, I do.
It is.
I think it's quite interesting. I have to say that when I look at a film, I don't think of that, which
I think you can hyperanalyze anything. I think even at the beginning when Kurt Russell says something and he says the Norwegian and the guy looks at him like, okay, that's not politically correct. or he calls him something and he goes, you mean the Norwegian? And he's like, oh, and then so you can kind of look at it as, is it a spy, what's going on? Are they doing some cooperative, like what's happening? We have to research us against them type of thing. And it plays on the paranoia of that. But what's happening politically during that time, it's like us versus them, like you could look at it that way too. But you can hyperanalyze any movie and say, oh, it's about this or that, In
1982 was about Reaganism, isn't it? Reaganomics at that time. But it is quite funny. I think what actually made me think of that, I think it's like I was picking up stuff on The Thing and reading different views. There's a couple of podcasts that kind of go into these kind of stories and their ideas of what everything else means. And I think what actually brought it to the fore is actually the first episode of Sabrina, when they went to go see that horror film, and the he, she, boy, girl character.
Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I can't remember her name. But then she's talking about, the film and what it, the political significance of the film and what it meant.
Yeah.
So it kind of made me hark back to like reading all this thing on The Thing. So that, The Thing is, The Thing has actually consumed my life probably for the last 3 weeks due to the short story and The Thing from Another World and watching The Thing, the film today.
Well, I'll also say if you are a film student, if you are someone who has studied film, you are forever ruined because quite literally you will hyper-analyze every freaking movie that comes across you, and you look at the themes, you look at the character and the development of the characters, and you analyze the origin of the story. Was it like, as we do, that's part of what we do is our podcast is we analyze book to film, but you can't help but do that. So I would caution anyone, if you become a film student, you will forever be ruined by, like the tropes, what is it? The hero's journey, right? So you're going to follow the hero's journey. Well, forget it. From that point on, you're going to watch every movie and analyze it from that direction and that point of view.
But I find it, it's interesting. Though sometimes I do wonder. I really don't know if the director or the writers put that much thought into it. I think I know from writing scripts myself. As far as I can normally tell if someone has put a social message in something. For instance, I watched the first Purge film. It's called The First Purge. It's not the first Purge film ever made. Just the name of it is called The First Purge.
What original title?
Yeah. And because they did this SJW, the social justice warrior kind of message into it, to the point where it's so hammered in there that it's like, it's not even, it's just blatant. And to be honest, it was quite offensive, only because, not to get political, but basically they're showing that the purge started in this black area, and because the government wanted to wipe out the black people. And then what they would have is these, KKK members in, and Hitler armies coming in to kill these black people. The bad thing about it wasn't like, but the characters that they had for the black characters were like characters that weren't hardworking individuals. They weren't, carrying jobs or trying to work 9 to 5 and living poor because of what they did. We basically had like, one was a drug seller, another one was a prostitute, another, what I mean? Like all these really bad black social types, that they're going to show the kind of stuff that you shouldn't be doing, because to be honest, you're just now painted a whole culture as being these kind of people, and they're not that kind of people.
Yeah, it's like stereotyping them into those roles and be like, and these are the ones we're killing.
Yeah, and it's basically showing to the simple fact that it's okay. So we're this is a message, and the white man prevails, but meanwhile it's like showing these people that apparently are going to be the victims, and not showing them in a really good light. So it's kind of like, I don't know what they were trying to do, but that's when I see a film. So get back to the thing, when I see a film and they're pushing this kind of agenda, you can always tell, because they normally get it very, very wrong, and they get it
exactly.
very wrong. And that's why
they focus so much on it that it literally it overtakes the story, and then you're more about the message than the plot, of the film.
Right.
Yeah, and I do think that, I don't think, like when you watch a lot of these films, I don't think that Alfred Hitchcock or John Carpenter or various screenwriters have a social message that they want to. I think you can inflict your own social message on what's happening at the time. Yeah. But at the end of the day, when it comes to motion pictures, I think basically it's studios looking to make a quick buck and how much money they make, and whether they think audiences are going to go see it. So I don't really think it's going to have this huge social influx.
I think also Carpenter had mentioned that with this project, he kind of was, he didn't know how to surpass what, the previous director had done for the movie. And if so, it's like you want to also do justice to something original. When you become especially an established director, or you're trying to establish yourself as a director, you don't want to be that jerk who takes something that someone did and did really well and F it up. You want to kind of do it right, and you want to do it in your own flair, but you also want to make sure that the message that you're trying to portray is always true to the core story.
They had a little fact in here I didn't know. I was just sitting here, I was listening to you, and I just read this. They actually screened the film annually in February to mark the beginning of winter at the Amundsen Scott South Pole Station. They actually filmed that. I didn't know that, but they play it for them beginning of winter.
That's almost like showing an airport film before you take off on a flight.
It's like my friend. We're flying out of Heathrow, and she goes, "We should be over Lockerbie right about now." And it's just like, don't say that. That's just cruel.
He's like, before we take off today, we're going to show you the movie Alive.
Yeah, exactly. Or even worse, snakes on a plane. Oh, great, awesome.
Yeah, you never know what anyone's packing in those overhead compartments.
Oh my God.
It's my what's the new thing? It's my assistant aid. No longer a dog. It's a python or
no, the peacock. What was it? The peacock in Newark. It was what do you call it? A service peacock.
No, there was a woman who had a squirrel. You heard about the woman who had a squirrel, right?
No, that lady in United tried to get a peacock on a plane in United Newark, International. Okay, it's like, come on, draw the line.
No, I don't know.
I'd rather have a parasite.
To be honest, I think if it keeps you in your seat, I don't care what you're carrying. I just find that a lot of times on flights, because I do a lot of flights over to Europe, and it basically, I don't know how many people go into their bag that's in the overhead compartment up and down, up and down. You're thinking, what the fuck do you need that? You need to go up that many times. Just put the back below you. Grab your iPod or whatever you're listening to music on and sit the hell down so we can just get on with it. They're like up and down, up and down, up and down. It's like, oh, do you want a snack?
You must be on Ryan Airways.
I'm that person who pretends to be asleep and I'm in the aisle. I'm like, oh yeah, they're not going to wake me up.
Yeah, they will.
No, a lot of them don't.
I'm horrible on the plane, and Isaac hates to sit with me on the plane because I'll be sitting on a plane, and hopefully if I'm by the window, it's fine because what I'll do is I'll put my headphones on, I'll put my computer ready to go, and I'll just put my head against it and go to sleep.
Right.
But if I'm in the middle, and God forbid there's someone sitting next to me, the first thing they'll do is they'll start talking to me. I go, excuse me, please don't talk to me. I go, I got my headphones on. Don't talk to me. I'm not here to be your friend. And then
I hate it when you're stuck in between people and you got to take a pee. And it's just like you got to climb over all these people. I'm a girl. I have to pee more.
That's why I always get the aisle. I never get the middle. Screw that.
I don't care about the window seat anymore. I want the aisle, depending on what I'm flying over. But I get tired of climbing over people. And then I get stuck on these little puddle jumpers to Syracuse from wherever fuckhole I've come from. And it's just like, and I mean, I'm just like stuck up against the window because these people are Amazonian. And I'm just like, I mean, seriously.
Well, I got kicked off an airline because I refused to sit next to a fat person.
Talk about PC culture there, Keith.
Well, no, because the thing is, if they're taking, I'm sorry, but if they're going to take over their seat, so basically I'm going to be like squeezed up like, against a blob. I'm like, I'm sorry, but that's uncomfortable for me. I paid for a full seat. I didn't pay for a third of a seat.
No.
And
I was trying to be genteel about it, but that was my problem too.
And I have nothing against morbidly obese people, but I think that sometimes if you're going to spill into the seat, I shouldn't have to pay for your seat because you're spilling into my seat. So I got in trouble when I raised it, and they said that I was
but now usually a person has to. Now it has become like some sort of law now that you have to pay for two seats. Like it before in the past it wasn't. Like you didn't have to. Now it has become.
Well, they can't be comfortable like that anyway, though. I mean, because
it's also your size is taking up two spaces. So it's just like when you give someone a belt. Right, to extend the belt because the belt doesn't fit you, you're going to have to pay for a second seat because you don't fit into the first seat,
They got belt extensions
more of a law.
now.
Well, I never quite understood why people are so freaking sensitive anyway. Because, I mean, I was on the tube, and I got kicked off the tube about 4 weeks ago. And basically, I got
kicked out of everywhere. What is going on?
Unfortunately, my mouth gets me in trouble. I was just reading my Kindle, minding my own business, my headphones in. This woman who's basically on the large size, wearing a tiger striped cat suit, and she said,
"That's just disaster recipe."
And the thing is, there were other seats on the tube, sort of thing. And she goes, "I want to sit in your seat." That's what she said to me. And I go, there are other seats around. I go, "You don't need to sit in my seat." She goes, "I have a mental deficiency." And I turned to her and I go, "When does bad taste been a mental deficiency?" Because of the way she was dressed, she started screaming and hollering, and they kicked me off the tube. And I didn't really say it. She said I was offending her. I'm sorry, but I wasn't offending her. It's not my bad. It's not my idea that she had bad taste in her dress sense. It has nothing to do with me. But there was other seats, so she decides to pick on me, and then basically she was yelling at me.
You guys got a bunch of assholes on the tube.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's this woman and she had her child running up and down with his scooter, and he's like hitting other people and the thing. And I said to this woman, I go, excuse me, can you do something about your child? And she goes, what do you want me to do? And I said, I don't care what you do. Go back in time and have an abortion. Just do something with your child.
Oh my God, stop.
And next thing I know, she starts screaming, I could get off the tube again. So I'm always getting kicked off the tube, but it's just like.
How do you get home?
What I do is I go out of the station and I go back into the station and then get the next.
They're going to eventually put a sign up and be like, this man is no longer allowed.
But, but I just find that, some people are overly sensitive. But it's like, come on.
Everybody's overly sensitive.
People can say anything they want to me. I don't get upset. I don't care. So, but anyway, I think we've
completely veered off course.
Like always. We just can't be trusted.
And everyone knows that.
Everybody knows what an asshole Keith is on subways or tubes.
He was overtaken by the thing.
Yes, everyone knows they're now into body shaming. How lovely. But, I mean, interesting also about the thing, did you know they originally wanted to film it in black and white?
No, I didn't. I didn't read that.
No. That actually would have been very interesting.
It might have looked good in black and white.
It was very monochromatic anyways, aside from like the visceralness of them getting the creature once it's like developed.
I think John Carpenter had to come up with a compromise, and that's why they have more muted colors. But he wanted to film in black and white. But the film studio, I think it's Paramount, basically said that we need to look at the television rights for when it goes to television, and we're not going to be able to sell the rights if it's a black and white film.
Right.
That's what they're thinking. So
we got to put a kibosh.
Yeah, we're going to make sure we make our money back.
With the aliens that it got was like a worm. It got into your body.
Tommy Knockers.
No, it wasn't the Mist.
No, the Tommy Knockers.
Was it the Tommy Knockers? No, it was 4 guys, and they had Duds It.
Oh no, that was that's film that I actually quite enjoyed the book.
I liked it too, but I was just thinking of that big guy was just shitting the worms out.
No, there's a Dreamcatcher one.
Dreamcatcher, that's what it was.
Dreamcatcher. That's
and I'm just there thinking about we want to get
Dreamcatcher is a big nod to that movie. Huge nod.
Yeah, it's one of those films that people just love to hate.
Yeah.
So is there anything else you want to add about The Thing, the 1982 John Carpenter classic? John?
I think we pretty much said it all.
I know. I feel like we have. I mean, I like the novella. I mean, it was the novella and what this is based on. It doesn't stay true to that, but it now, what Keith said, that there's a prequel to that kind of gives more of that story. I feel like I want to go back and watch that, but I like the movie The Thing. I think it was done really well, and like Keith had mentioned too, the characters and how they interact with each other. The writing is really well, so I liked it. That was great.
And Vicky?
Yeah, I liked it. I liked it better than the old one, a lot better. The old one just didn't keep my attention as much. But and I like Kurt Russell's hair. Apparently, some of us don't. And I
admit it. You have a lock of it somewhere in your drawer.
If I don't, I'm going to have to get one now. That's you guys can get me on Amazon. Even if it's a lock of
Kurt Russell's hair. A vintage lock of Kurt Russell's hair.
From The Thing. You all just wish you could get one. No, I enjoyed it. I like my horror flicks. I like the special effects that still translate well into our century.
And I'm just happy that Kurt Russell can rock a Farrah Fawcett hairdo.
Yeah,
so, just love that Keith hates it. Hater.
I didn't hate his hair. I just said it had a life of its own.
Hair, Keith. You hate his hair.
I think his hair can have its own movie. That's all. But no, overall, I think 1982 John Carpenter's The Thing deserves its cult status, and I think it's a film that will live on and on. And I would hate for them to actually reboot it or remake it. I think it would lose something if they actually did that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hand over the reins to John, and he's going to discuss The Faculty.
Wonderful. So The Faculty is a 1998 American sci-fi fiction teen horror film directed by Robert Rodriguez, who has done a mix of sci-fi kid movies like Spy Kids and Shark Boy and Lava Girl, as well as some sci-fi horror noir films like Machete, Predators, and Sin City, which he actually co-directed with Quentin Tarantino. Such a great movie. The Faculty was written by Kevin Williamson and starred about everybody and their brother. There was like at least like 30 people in this film. Like, and if you watch it, you're like, oh, I forgot that Selma Hayek was in this.
I know. I didn't expect all. I mean, I
was
watched
like,
it before, but I didn't expect to recognize when you go back and watch it again. And
It was made for $15 million and grossed about $40 million. 1990, the writers both sent the script out and no one really was interested. And it wasn't until the success of a really well-known movie called Scream that Miramax bought the script. Williamson was forced to do a rewrite, not on the plot of the movie, but rather of the characters, and they added some new characters and the dialogue in order to make it hip. When the movie was released, the audience, by the majority of about 53%, deemed it a ripoff of sci-fi thrillers. Putting it at best, Elia Whitley, who wrote an essay, identifies some of the film's influences. A mix of Invasion of the Body Snatchers and The Thing, with thrown in some Terminator, a spoonful of Breakfast Club, a pinch of Stepford Wives. You've got a big mess of a movie set in school that's being taken over by conformist aliens, one teacher at a time. You got this funny, occasionally scary, quite gory, and extremely entertaining 1998 Robert Rodriguez film. So I thought that was really eloquently put. That was actually on Wikipedia. I thought, well, that's a pretty good summary of this film. Keith, did you have anything to add to that as well?
I got nothing to add. I mean, I guess the best thing probably with Kevin Williamson is due to Scream. I mean, that actually made his name, and we got quite a few Kevin Williamson films coming out around this time. Though Kevin Williamson, quite interesting. I think that we need to see where he cut his teeth on was basically Dawson's Creek.
Yeah,
and I do think is that what we get with Kevin Williamson, and I do think it has to do with technology. I think that for some reason we thought that technology would make people more communicative, more communicable, and a bit more on the ball and a bit more self-referential. So we do get a lot of self-referential, which we did get with Scream, and even teaching Mr. Tingle and the faculty has a lot of this self-referential. Not realizing that technology would actually make everyone shortcut and talk less. So that was quite an interesting thing for 1982.
Yeah,
but I mean, overall, I don't have too much about the making of it. It seemed like there wasn't a lot of information on the making of it. It seemed like they just kind of got on with it.
Yeah. What about you, Vicky? Anything?
I was, like I said, I liked the fact that I watched it before, like a long time ago, and I just rewatched it this week. But I was just noticing that all the different, like Elijah Wood, I forgot he was in there. Sean Hatchsey, Clay Duvall, Laura Harris, Famke Janssen, Jon Stewart. I mean, I totally did not remember Jon Stewart.
As a professor or whatever.
Yeah. And I mean, I just got a kick out of watching where some of these people were one of their first, early year kind of deals. Especially Elijah Wood. You didn't see him in too much back then. He wasn't the Lord of the Rings.
Yeah. Precious, my precious.
But yeah, I mean, I got a kick out of it. I mean, because I think it was supposed to be received as kind of a lighthearted kind of thing. I still trying to figure out what the hell they were snorting, and they were putting in pens.
Well, I think it was like a caffeine pill or something, because he's like, oh, is this a secret? And he's like, oh, and he covered it up or whatever.
Yeah, but I mean, if I snort caffeine, I'm not going to get that whacked on it like they were.
Well, it was a cocktail of things. I think
household goodies or
household goodies. So probably it was like caffeine, probably mixed with a bit of what's the stuff that you take if you're allergic to something?
Benadryl.
Antihistamine, yeah. A little Benadryl.
Probably a little bit of baby laxatives, because was they cut cocaine with to actually help subdue.
Who haven't of us that gone to high school, especially IHC and then to Watertown High, didn't think that the faculty was kind of FUBAR? Because I remember back in the day, the teachers used to go into. They would smoke and drink lots of coffee.
Oh, yeah.
Faculty rooms back then.
This was like 90. This movie was in the 90s, so all that kind of like went out, like the smoking.
The teachers, I don't think. Because I don't remember even in Dallas, it was late 80s where they started kicking everybody to the curb where you couldn't smoke in buildings and stuff. But I just
or maybe it's just hard to film that way.
Yeah, but I mean, you always wanted to know what was going on in the faculty room. What's going on in there? I didn't care when I got older, but when you were younger, it's like, what do they do in there? It's like, what are they doing?
While we take a brief recess break, we hope you enjoyed this commercial as well as a trailer of the film. So we'll be right back.
Let's play a game. I will ask you yes or no questions. Ready? Do you have a rocking chair to relax on? Do you have space to store your toddler's toys if an unexpected guest came over? Can you lay down comfortably on your couch? If your answer is no to one or more of these questions, then you need the new IKEA catalog. Visit IKEA at Cairo Festival City and get your free copy. Enjoy 1,000 new ideas and more than 2,000 new lower prices. IKEA 2018 catalog. Make room for life.
IKEA.
From Kevin Williamson, the writer of Scream and Scream 2, and Robert Rodriguez, the director of Desperado, and From Dusk Till Dawn, comes the new science fiction thriller.
No more pencils, no more books, no more teachers' dirty looks.
The students at Harrington High have always suspected their teachers were from another planet.
Is this going to be on the test?
This is the test.
This time, they're right. Now, these 6 students won't just question authority. They'll have to destroy it. The faculty.
Please report to the principal's office.
Hello?
What's your favorite scary movie?
I have a bunch of favorite movies. I watch them all on Shudder.com for only $4.99 a month.
That's a scary low price.
But if I had to pick a favorite, it'd probably be Scream.
Oh.
Yeah, it's the only streaming service that lets me watch hundreds of horror movies on demand.
I'll be right back.
Hello? Hello? Hello, are you gonna subscribe? Hello?
Go to Shudder.com to subscribe, if you dare.
And we're back, folks. And Vicky's going to give us a synopsis of The Faculty.
To the students at Harrington High, the principal and her posse of teachers have always been a little odd, but lately have been behaving positively alien. Controlled by otherworldly parasites, the faculty try to infect students one by one. Cheerleader Delilah, who's played by Jordana Brewster, football player Stan, Sean Hattasey, and drug dealer Zeke, John Hartnett, and new girl Mary Beth, Laura Harris, team up with some of their other classmates to fight back against the invaders. And Mary Beth had to be my favorite character.
So, Keith, do you want to start us with the discussion of the film?
I think it's one of those films that's very 90s. It has that really 90s feel to it. As far as the high schools go, and I mean, everyone over analyzing everything. And I mean, it's interesting. It's quite funny, like rewatching, because as you know, they're remaking The Breakfast Club apparently. And,
they're not.
Yeah,
Why?
Bunch of millennials talking about how life is so unfair. I could just imagine what that's going to be like. But it was quite interesting to see that they, it is a film that it's an enjoyable film. I'll give it that. It's a very enjoyable film, but it does hit every single cliche in the book. I mean, even when you have your cast of teens, you have your Ali Sheedy geeky girl, which is Clea Duvall. You have your
goth girl,
Anthony Michael Hall character, which is Elijah Wood. The one who's being bullied upon. You have your jock, which is Emilio Estevez is now what's his name, Sean Hatosy, and then you have your drugger, which Judd Nelson is now Josh Hartnett. So you do have your Breakfast Club tropes thrown in there. The only thing I wish that they had more of, and it's only because they had such a great cast for the teachers, and I would like to see more of the teachers. I mean, you had like Robert Patrick, just came from Terminator 2. Bebe Neuwirth, who's like a Broadway legend.
I love her.
From Frasier as well, and Piper Laurie from Carrie. I mean, She's fantastic. Femke Janssen, we see a lot of her. She's still around. You do have that.
Selma Hayek.
Selma Hayek, which basically, if you ever watch a Selma Hayek film and you can make a drinking game out of anything she does, anytime she says something you don't understand, you drink, but you're drunk by the
Dusk Till
Dawn. You're drunk by the time she's off the screen. But I mean, but it does have the trope where it's like you have an ugly person wearing a pair of glasses that take the glasses off and they're stunning.
I know. Well, apparently you want to have a parasite because like Famke Janssen, who is just like very awkward and quiet and soft-spoken, all of a sudden she just becomes like a siren and seductress and she's just like badass. I'm like, maybe I want this parasite because...
Yeah. Well, I mean, even Piper Laurie came across looking quite voluptuous. Taking over. And, Robert Patrick was a douchebag of a coach, and he comes off as a bit nicer, sort of thing. So
I feel like his character didn't change that much. Like, he was already a dick. I mean, like, the first scene, he's, like, yelling at the kid. He's like, get off my field, and flipping the bench over. And I'm like, wow.
And I do find, but because you have all these tropes thrown into this film, it does work. But sometimes I think that if you have like no memory of films, or if you're not a lover of films, like we watch a lot of films, us three here, I think that you probably can get lost in it. But then when I think now we're because of the podcast, we watch films and we tend to be dissecting things a bit more than what we would normally do. As I said before, it was the Breakfast Club meets The Thing meets Invasion of the Body Snatchers. I mean, about what you were saying before, it does hit all those marks.
Yeah.
And the Kevin Williamson script, I mean, I think one of the reasons why the film wasn't a huge box office success might be by that time I think that teen market was done to death. The simple fact it was all these teenagers who were all self-referencing media and public films at that time, and I think I think this is probably coming to the close of all that, because we had Scream, we had 10 Things I Know, 10 Things I Hate About You. We also had, numerous films at that time all doing the same thing. Yeah. I think, Kevin Williamson was supposed to direct this, and of course he went off to do Teaching Mrs. Tingle or Any Mrs. Tingle if you're looking at the European UK market, which is changed its title to, which basically had the same thing as well. And I think that after I saw What You Did and all these other films and the TV show Dawson's Creek, I think they're all winding down at this point. And I think that's probably what kept The Faculty from...
it debuted at number 5 in the U.S. at the time.
Yeah,
at the time, but it didn't make its money back. It's only through home video, and it has now have the cult status. And be honest, when I first saw the film, I really enjoyed the film. I mean, some of the film doesn't live up. Some of the CGI is a little bit ropey because CGI has moved on a little bit better than that, especially the big climax scene where it gets kind of even more ropey than before. Yeah. But I do like the idea of it, stuff like this. I think there's some mechanics in it that the whole water mechanics. I'm surprised that Evian didn't want to put their name on this because they sold a lot more bottles.
Aquafina or Poland Springs.
Yeah. Well, as everyone knows, Evian spelled backwards is naive. So
pretty much.
Never really thought of it that, but okay.
So, but I think the film works, and I think it's an enjoyable popcorn movie.
Yeah.
I don't think it'll ever have like social relevance in the whole making of films, but I have to say I always enjoy Robert Rodriguez films. I stuck with Robert Rodriguez to El Mariachi, which became Desperado when he remade it for the American market, and even the stuff that he does with Quentin Tarantino,
it was fun.
Yeah,
it was a fun film.
It's fun. I think one of the things I think was interesting was like, when they're sort of looking at the parasite and how it moves, I thought the effects for that were kind of cool because even when the girl puts her hand against a glass and it comes up against her fingers, I thought that was like really interesting, the symbiosis of it all. Just the fact that there's like one host, and then when once you kill it, then all the rest die. It was kind of, that was a little odd. And for me, I'm such a sci-fi geek nerd. I'm like, but why? So was the one host controlling all of them, and then how do you fix the problem of for instance, a few of the faculty members were either sliced and diced and they regrew their limbs. So wouldn't they just kind of fall apart? Like it was like you just kind of like, I'm a big sci-fi geek and I kind of pick shit like that apart. And like the one teacher literally loses her head and puts it back on, and at the end she's like waving from the from the bleachers, and I'm like, what the fuck? How are you alive still? Wait a minute. Okay, someone needs to help me with this.
I think that there are parts of the film that, you know, you do have these questions of it. I think the original science behind the film, like when they felt, you know, when Elijah Wood does find the creature and they put it in water, I think the science started out quite well. And I think by that time, Kevin Williamson's like, I'm this, you know, gay movie horror geek, and I don't know nothing about science. So I'm just going to forget about it. Yeah, I think it is. You know, so I think that once you get past, you know, a third of the film, and science goes all out. It doesn't matter anymore. And yeah, I think it's one of those films that you kind of go see, but you can't overthink. I think if you overthink it, it just becomes a mess. It's just a mess.
That one girl kept slapping the shit out of her boyfriend throughout the movie.
Oh my God, that was the most aggressive high school I think I've ever seen, in the sense that it was like, there's just a lot of shit going on in that high school. The one kid getting his, you know, literally his balls getting busted on the flagpole. I'm like, right. Where the hell, you know, here's a faculty, but where the hell are they at? Because this is before everyone gets taken over. And you're like, is no one going to stop these
responsible adults?
I know. Like, where is everyone at?
Well, what I couldn't understand is like, okay, they got all this fighting going on. I guess you could contribute, maybe they would be taken over the aliens, but they can't be taken over by this alien, because the thing is, they all work as a team. They all work as one, you know, one mind or one unit. So you get these people fighting, but then after everything's solved at the end, and you know, spoiler alert, everything does get solved in the end. Yeah. And also like this couple that's fighting all the way through, which is played by Summer Phoenix, which is interesting with her little cameo. But all of a sudden, like, everyone's happy. Everyone just gets on all of a sudden. Everyone's like, you know, which I'm kind of wondering if there was like another ending, and that maybe the Weinstein brothers or Merrimack said that, no, we need an upbeat ending. I think if it had like a down ending where they didn't win, never taken over. So you had like this Invasion of the Body Snatcher ending, where, you know, one of the guys is walking and he sees the woman in Invasion of the Body Snatchers, and he starts screaming at him because he thinks that he's not one of them, but he has become one of them. Yeah, I think that would have been more effective. But I think that, you know, in the 90s, I think we did have this thing where we need to have everything with a happy ending. We always had these happy endings tacked on to everything.
Yeah, but this was over the top happily ending. I mean, the fact, again, there's no, like, you kind of get a buildup of, you know, the goth girl and the jock who wants to be a brainy, you know, you kind of get a buildup of them like falling in love or falling for each other, right? You get that. But then Elijah Wood's character and the other really bitchy girl end up together. I was like, wait, what? I'm like, how in the hell, how does this happen? Like, and then she's all of a sudden nice. Now she's like, oh, hi, honey, how are you? And I'm like, what? Yeah.
And that's one of my problems with the film, because it's like, okay, I know that when they all come together, they have more of an understanding. So you do this Breakfast Club moment where there's like, oh yeah, life is so horrible no matter what clique you belong to. You know, so you have that, you know, that cliquey, you know, what they do in all films, it seems like, after Breakfast Club. But yeah, I have to say that the way that they tied everything up at the end is kind of like, you know, I don't think it would have been that easy. It's like, okay, we got rid of the evil, everything, we're all going to be happy now, and we're just going to accept each other for the way we are, because we're all just wonderful people, because we're so glad to be alive. Yeah. And that's the ending that we have. Yeah. And I don't think things can be tied up in a bow that way. I think that, you know, if anything like this should happen in a reality sort of setting, I'm sure that everyone would just go back to their cliques.
Yeah. or you're gonna be a little bit traumatized from what happened. I mean, Elijah Wood should be like what should have been like in a corner shaking, because he saw this big monster that, you know, yes, he did slay it, but it was like, that has to be a slightly traumatizing thing to be like, okay, that was one. What if there's multiple of those things here on this planet? I mean, I actually would have liked that. You know, remember when they were playing a football game that the neighboring team went back and they infected them? It would have been interesting if the neighboring team was one of them. Like it was like a male and a female, and maybe the male went to that neighboring town to kind of infect them. So it would have been an interesting, everything's fine here, we're all going back to normal and whatever. And then you kind of see over here, oh, nope, now this is just starting over here, you know?
Yeah, I think it could have used that dark ending. I mean, there's a lot of things there, this film doesn't have a lot of originality. Even the soundtrack's not very original. It's like, we have a remake of Another Brick in the Wall by a group called Class of 99, which, whatever happened to them. Offspring doing The Kids Aren't All Right. And we have Soul Asylum doing School's Out. I mean, even the soundtrack is like a retread. You know what I mean? So it's like, and it is a film full of like retreading sort of stuff. I mean, Robert Rodriguez, I don't think he's the fault of it. I think it's just that I think it was the simple fact that he was a director for hire and they brought him in because before he wasn't the original person supposed to be directing this. Kevin Williamson was going to direct his own script, and I think they brought him in after the success of From Dusk Till Dawn, and he probably goes, "Okay, you make this, and we'll let you make Spy Kids."
Yeah.
And I think
it's also it's interesting because like with this, I wondered what his version would have been because of the changes that were made. Like they added more of the character. So I wonder what was the original core, because maybe having less of the kids there working together to solve the situation, because all around this time, around when these films came out, was all about group survivalists, right? We all have to survive this situation, and some might not make it and some will, right? In this situation, they all made it. Like there was like that's part of the problem. I think that the mechanism was if there was less of them and then maybe less of them made it, then maybe, it would have been a little bit more offsetting. But like the fact that all of them survived the situation and they're all kind of like, hey, let's go for a picnic now. Like, hey, we're my best friend. Hey, we survived those aliens. Yay. Like it's really weird where I think that they learn from that. They learn from the survivalists that some don't come out in the end and some die. Like Scream, that was part of it, right? Some did not make it out. And so those who did, we survived and we're a little bit like traumatized by that situation.
Did the principal, Valerie Drake, played by Bebe Neuwirth, did she come back in the end?
She got killed.
Because she got shot.
Oh, no, she got killed. No, sorry. She was the only one that got like...
Yeah, I couldn't remember.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think that Jon Stewart's character came back. I don't think that Piper Laurie's character came back.
Well, yeah, anyone they used that stuff on, whatever the medicine was, yeah, they were toast. But like if you looked in again, a weird thing that... the teacher who is the awkward, quiet one, whatever, she's in the fans and she's watching Josh Hartnett's character. And it's kind of like, oh, he's my boyfriend. I'm like, no, he's your student. What the hell is going on? And she's like waving like, hi, honey. Keep it clean. You're like, oh.
Well, I don't know about Josh Hartnett, but the thing is, as far as his character goes, I think he was like 22 and he's still going to school.
Oh, that's true. He was probably but the thing is that doesn't make sense because he was really smart. It wasn't like I think he was just, I don't know. It was weird. Like that character was a weird character.
Could have been a paleobiologist. The kid was so smart.
I know.
Well, we also have this, and another trope that we have in a lot of these teenage films is like no parents wherever. There's no parents anywhere. We see Elijah Wood's parents, okay, and of course,
who are extremely overly protective of their kid. Like the poor kid gets like bullied, and like they come home and he's like, "Is he doing drugs? Where's his drugs at?" Like, and they're like ransacking his room. You're just like, what the hell?
I know. And Elijah Wood. God bless him. One of those actors where a film makes them huge, the fact that they don't want to be cast in anything anymore. So, Elijah Wood, for all the interesting horror films that are out there at the moment, he's normally behind them. He's not behind the whole Blumhouse stuff that we got, but if you see all these like very interesting horror films, he's behind those now. There is his own horror film studio, but
he's done a lot. Like he's not beyond just a horror movie. I think he's become more of like a transmedia storyteller too. Like he wants to incorporate other elements to films, and I think that's courageous to do.
So I think so we do get him. Josh Hartnett. The interesting story I have about him is that I have a friend who's an actress and she works a lot in the West End, and Josh Hartnett does a lot of plays in the West End here for some reason, and apparently he's just a stoner. So, so obviously this wasn't too big of a reach for him this role.
But remember, he said he didn't use his own stuff, and he was forced to use his own stuff in this. So,
I mean, even there are some weird mechanics, and I'm not sure, now that everything's becoming a lot more PC than they were in 98, I'm not sure that you could actually use some of the stuff in this film today as, film plot twists or points, to make sure everyone takes drugs so you can figure out if you're taking drugs, you're fine.
I mean, there's got to be an easier way, because even I was like, couldn't you just sprinkle it on the person or like put like ingest a little bit of it? Like they were like doing a full line of oof.
I know, it's just like I could never. I mean, not that I have ever started anything, but I mean that was just a little bit over the top. Like inhaling a whole body of whatever the hell that was. It's like man, there was Superman in it. It's just
when the other thing that's kind of like grazed over is a girl, oh, I can't do this. It will kill me. I can't. You can't do that. And then she does it. And I'm thinking, does he not want to call her out and be like, girl, you either were completely lying or what's happening here? Because you told me you could not do this.
Yeah, and then then they had that plot device where they do like a flashback sequence about how she can do it, because apparently she has an extra pair of nostrils somewhere. It's like, okay.
No, it's like her nose blocked up, and then she used her tentacle finger to like smack it out, and like it was weird. It was really weird. Well, the fact her transforming, that was another thing that was killing me. The weird cloud things around her, like the tendril things that you didn't see it. And I was like, what the hell is this? What do we like? It's like, what is this supposed to be? And it's like she's bigger than what she is, or she can transmorph into anything. But it was this weird like smoky cloud thing around her, and I'm like, what? Yeah.
And then she goes back to being her human self, and then she goes back to being the monster thing. And I have to say, it's kind of like she's been back. Those things that you see on the shopping channel. Yes, I do see things in the shopping channel once in a while. Where like you put all your luggage into like this plastic bag, and then you put the vacuum cleaner in and just sucks everything down. Oh yeah. Like, is she vacuum packed?
Yeah, like she doesn't mean she like transforms like out of nothing. And then one of my favorite scenes is when she's in the locker room and she's like standing there buck naked. It shouldn't have taken him that long to realize what the hell is going on. Like, why are you standing here naked?
Well, obviously she's the only one that had no tick claws in her own.
Yeah, seriously.
Everyone else was quite established. I mean, Clea Duvall. She's Robert Duvall's daughter, first of all. Yeah. Elijah Wood, Josh Hartnett. They must have like these clauses in their contract, and the new girl is the one who can show her body. So which is interesting fact, because no one else showed their body. Everyone else they fully clothed the whole time. So,
well, and there was never any. I think what's very interesting about this too is usually there's that. Drug, aside from him like selling drugs, whatever, and it was because that's what could kill them. There was no like sexual overtone or drug overtone, like, this is what's going to get you into trouble. There was none of that. So it was kind of just a survival thing. Like, oh, this is taking over. We need to survive, and how do we survive?
Well, I also found that some of the script was a bit lazy. I mean, you even get Kevin Williamson, referencing himself with Nev Campbell's name mentioned in it. Is a Nev Campbell nude in it? You know what I mean? It's like, like, oh God, now you're even self-referencing your own material. Sort of thing. So, I mean, I think it's one of those things where it's just like, oh, I think the original story that was written by David Welcher and Bruce Kimmel back in 1990 probably was probably a very good story. Yeah. And I think that once the Miramax team, the Weinsteins got involved, or Dimension Films, this one's made by same company really, and they thought, well, Scream did a big success, let's bring like all these elements in, and we'll get like this hip teenage cast, and we'll put them against these cult movie actors, adults, the teachers, and we're going to paint it by numbers, and we're going to be a huge success without and people are going to buy it just because simple fact is, they love Scream, they love these actors, and they, and the older generation will like these other actors, and so we're going to throw them all together. I'm just going to make this movie because it's going to be fantastic. It doesn't matter what we do. Yeah, and I think that's the faculty.
Well, it's also they amp it up. It's like, it's funny because I've watched it a few times, and yesterday I rewatched it again. But like the opening scene when Josh Hartnett comes in his car, and it's like, and like he's racing into the school, and he's just, he runs, he comes in there, and then you see the couple fighting. It's a lot of like, it's like if someone gave you a shot and then took your head and shaked it up really quickly, and then gave you another shot and shook your head again. It's like, it's meant to, it's like, easy mechanisms but it's also lazy mechanisms to make you feel agitated, versus like sometimes it's about the slow build of like agitation and what's going on and what's happening. But that was sort of the time, and the beginning of the low attention span for youth. We don't have time to get there, so let's make him like just agitated right off the start and like keep him there.
I also think, when you sit there and make something that's built upon stereotypes, I think that sometimes you do have, it's lazy filmmaking or lazy script writing, because what you have is you got people who don't actually bypass their stereotype. Elijah Wood doesn't go past the stereotype. Clea Duvall is that nerdy girl who doesn't bypass her. And of course, okay, I'm going to be the deep, dark, sensitive one that no one likes me. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to wear dark eyeliner and dark eyeshadow. Okay.
Yeah. And the bitchy girl, the bitchy popular girl is going to call her a lesbian, and you're so mean. And like, it's the same thing every time.
Yeah. Simple fact, but it's even when they get to the point where they're actually ripping off the makeup scheme of Breakfast Club. I mean, even the outfits are ripped off. The only thing different is probably Josh Hartnett, probably doesn't wear a long shooter jacket. And I'm probably sure that's probably due to Columbine. They didn't want to show anyone in a long duffel jacket.
Yeah.
But I imagine that if Columbine never happened, he probably would have been in the Judd Nelson outfit.
Yeah.
Because even the jock is wearing his football jacket the whole time.
Yeah, the jersey. Yeah.
And the only time the pretty girl or the Molly Ringwald character, Jordana Brewster, the only time she's wearing trousers is the simple fact is when she's going to be thrown over a table because they probably didn't want to show her underwear.
Oh, that's true.
But the whole time is just like, and then, the name dropping, it's like, don't kiss me because it's taken me 72 hours to put on my Estee Lauder lipstick.
I know. Yeah.
First of all, 72 hours to put on lipstick. I mean, what do you start putting it on Monday? And it's Friday?
And your first instance of her, she's like a queen bee, she's telling all these girls, you gotta
lipstick like
I
that.
know.
But another thing I found quite weird. Okay, you had the black character, which was kind of like, kind of thrown in there for God knows what reason, because he didn't have.
You mean Usher?
But he didn't have any like story arc whatsoever, and you're kind of thinking, why did I throw him in there for? Because it's like, he wasn't really a part of anything. Just as like, I think he has like one line that actually means anything. Are you jealous that I'm the captain now? It's like after the guy quits. Like,
well, and it's just meant to be another bully, and it seems like again there's so many bullies in this that you're like, well, what was the point of that? Like, because the one guy, he's a bully, then the other guy's a bully, and then and it's just like, oh my God, like why are there so many bullies in this school?
And another thing, it was a school of loners.
Yeah.
I mean, no one okay, they're all saying, okay, we're all part of this, I'm the geeky clique, I'm the bully clique, I'm the, gothic girl clique, I'm the popular girl clique, but none of them had friends. None of them had friends outside. Yeah. None of them hung around any groups. They're like a bunch of these loners, and you're kind of thinking, I can understand if, okay, Breakfast Club can get away with it because Breakfast Club, they're all tied into detention and they're together and they're stuck together. So you don't really know what their history is before or after detention. And you don't have that idea. But this this shows these same cliques operating in a working school, and none of them have friends. None of them have. Even the popular Queen Bee, who's Queen Bee, she doesn't have her group of girls running around.
She has a minions, like her little minions that she tells them what to do. But yeah.
But even the football jock, which I have to sit there and say, he was probably the most shallow. He wasn't the most built football quarterback jock guy. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, he's quite a weak little football jock from what you normally picture. So I guess they did cast against type there. But I mean, he didn't really have his football guys he hung around with. He had Usher coming in every once in a while and, hey buddy, and that's about it. Yeah. Josh Hartnett doesn't have any clique that he hangs around with. He's a loner. They're all loners.
Yeah.
It just seemed kind of funny that they didn't, if they're part of these cliques or they're part of this high school, that none of them have friends.
One of the scenes that I'm glad I remembered it. So when they all know, okay, the jig is up, and like it's after the nurse is like taking the students in and she's doing this to all of them, and they're trying to leave the school. The entire school has been transformed at this point. Why in the hell would they not bum rush them? There's like the entire school is like, so part of me was like, what, at what point why wouldn't they all just bum rush them, attack them, and then transform them? Like that. So that scene was like a sloppy scene to me, because it would have been like, shouldn't they have sneaked out or try to get out or try to get away? Because they clearly, all of them know that they're not what they should be. Like they're
sort of like The Walking Dead, when they put all the friggin', dead people shit all over them, the dead goo, and they try to sneak out through the herd of walking,
But at least there's a mechanism there that works, but there's no mechanism there. It's like they're just all walking out trying to get away, and it's like they all go, oh, they're not like us, and they're watching them walk away, and I'm like, what? I'm like, why wouldn't they just bum rush them and take them?
Or maybe it's an idea for the political times of our times, when you sit there and think of the simple fact that if you make society and they all work together as one and everyone's the same, this is what happens. There's no individual thought.
Well, but in a way, it's sort of weird that there is no individual thoughts, because these organisms, I think they all have a hive mind. So that's what's sort of weird. Like I never understood, like, what the things that are taking them over. It's like one hive mind. It's almost like the Borg, right? Oh, come join us. You're gonna like the guy. He's like, you're gonna like it. Yeah, you're gonna feel good. And it's like, what? Yeah.
To be honest, I think when you're watching this film, I think if this high, because to be honest, when the movie first opens, even the high school, you got people going through their class. There's nobody hanging around in groups. There's nobody hanging around as friends. They're all kind of like, they are these single-minded people, every single one of them. And even the teachers are single-minded. They don't get on. No one's friendly with anyone. It's pretty much a school of people, a bunch of
school nurses all gathered. Salma Hayek's a drink.
Yeah.
No, I think she was just really sick, and I was like, oh, she's like.
But I think that if you had a film that is actually celebrating people's differences and people's ideas and stuff like this, and everyone can be different and everyone can have their own ideas, and then you had this creature to come in and so that goes, everyone being a hive mind and everyone being together and feeling so happy.
Yeah.
And then you would have something to break off of, and I think that, and then you can have that successful ending. It's like, yes, we're free of mind, but when the alien's offering an alternative lifestyle that's better than the life that you have,
yeah, how would you not take it?
Why are you fighting against it? Because to be honest, you guys are all, it is a movie full of miserable people and everyone hating everyone else. No one likes anyone in this film.
And again, the women seem to be transformed into these goddesses. So like, here you go, give me a parasite. Like you go from, this broke ass.
Someone find me the
shield. You're like, oh, hey, how are you? I look amazing.
Well, another thing is you also have this weird plot device. Okay, you got, Femke Jensen, who takes off her glasses, becomes stunning. She does that, that classic 90s thing, like ugly girl takes glasses off, becomes a beautiful girl. Which, if it wasn't for that, we wouldn't have, what's her name, Anne Hathaway have a movie career, because that's pretty much what she put her movie career on in the beginning. And, so she takes her glass off, she becomes beautiful. Piper Laurie, as we stated before, does the same thing. Salma Hayek, she does the same thing.
It's literally all the women. That's what I'm saying. The women get transformed into these, like, beautiful. Even who's the
But Jordana Brewster puts on glasses.
Yeah.
It's like...
No, but who's the one that actually the first teacher that stabs the principal, and she's like, she even transformed. She looked more.
That's Piper Laurie, yeah.
Yeah, Piper Laurie looked all perfect,
Yeah, but then you get, so you have this. So I can understand you built up this, mythos within your film, sort of thing. And then you tear that apart by giving Jordana Brewster's character a pair of glasses when she's transformed. So so everyone's eyesight is fantastic except for hers. What happened?
No, you know what that was? It was her way of yes, it was her trying to be like, oh, I'm not who I am. I'm surprised they didn't put her in a wig, because it was her remember, because both of them, the teachers found them, and so it was her way of like, let me put these glasses on. I'm not going to look like me. She's like this. Look. I'm not. It's not me.
What about when Stan's taking a shower and the old lady comes in there and her scalp's sliding off her skull?
That was sexy.
And he's hugging her.
Can you imagine being in the shower in high school and some old lady that's melting comes into your shower?
Well, and the worst thing about it, he's holding her, so he might have had an erection, which is even sadder.
I highly doubt it.
I love the person comes in, he's like, go get help. And he's like, what's going on here? Never mind, just go get help.
Not unless you're necrophiliac or something.
But even that, I mean, what's the message that scene give to you? That old people are old and dried up.
Or they dry up quicker.
Yeah, they're just old and dried up.
I do have to say, I did like that mechanism with the water when they're just like, at one point when she comes in and she like literally takes a glass of water, just like slaps her face. I was like, oh.
Yeah.
Lori.
The coach is out standing in the field with the sprinklers hitting him.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It was like that mechanism, all that stuff worked. And I was like, that was actually really smart because they need the water. Because we're built to water. So I think the organism thought, oh, well, just take over this thing. And it's like, oh, crap, it actually needs water to survive. And it's like absorbing it, basically.
I think to make the movie work, I think if they took the main characters, the main teenagers, and made them side characters and made the teachers the main focus,
yeah.
I think the film would work, because whenever it shows the teachers, that was the most interesting thing. But because they tried to shove in this teen movie into it, I think that's what's the downfall of this film is for me. I did enjoy the film. I think it's a good popcorn film, and you can just put it on. A little bit like Disturbing Behavior, if anyone's seen that.
Right.
It works along the same tropes sort of thing, but that's more of a Stepford Wives kind of a ripoff.
Right.
I think it works that way, but I do sit there and say that when you overthink this film, none of it works.
Yeah. Well, no, and going on what you just said, because if you flip it, right, and you make it Elijah Wood finds his thing and it inhabits him, right? Mm-hmm. And then he goes and he's a loner, he's not around people, and then he starts infecting other people, and then it's like the faculty starts to notice these cliques. So everyone's on their own, and now they're not, and everyone is starting to form their own cliques. And then you could have it to be where, each, like in the beginning when they're like talking about BB Newirth is like talking about, no, you're not getting funding for this, you're not getting, and so you get all these like teachers, faculties that don't really work well together. That now, have you seen this going on? Did you see the kid who didn't like it, and then them noticing things and then them having to band together? I think you can almost have like a Shaun of the Dead situation where it's like kind of comedic beat, and then noticing all this crap going on around them, that it's like, now it's like, oh, something's taken over our school, and now they're coming after us. Like that would be actually an interesting take.
I mean, it did feel like a film that they were making up as they went along. It's hard to believe that there was actually a script made before they actually started shooting. It sounded like they were like, oh, let's add this, let's add that. Oh, this would be great.
Yeah, let's add this character, let's add that. Yeah.
It's a bit like, one of those, yeah, it's kind of a bit like something like a writer that writes for a long periods of time and then gets to the point where they get sucked up their own arsehole. Stephen King did that for a while. Do you know what I mean? It's like, or The Matrix did that, didn't it? It's like The Matrix, the first one's like quite a great film, and then you see the sequels and got sucked up his own arsehole. And you're like, what the hell's going on here?
You're like, what just happened? We were going somewhere great, and then it just went the whole other direction.
We're gonna throw stuff at this and just see what sticks. And I think that's pretty much what this film is.
Yeah.
But saying that, I do enjoy the film. It's just It's
a fun little one. It's like a fun little popcorn film, like you said. You throw it on in the background, you watch it, like, oh,
Yeah. I mean, I won't be.
Fun film. It's not Oscar-nominated material, but I mean, it's a fun film.
I mean, I probably won't be buying a Blu-ray version of it anytime soon. But if it pops up on television, I will watch it. Kind of like a lot of those 90s horror films are a bit like that. I kind of like, it's like they pop up, I kind of watch them. It's like, oh, this is enjoyable. But then, and once I've watched it, it's gone out of my mind faster than anything, sort of thing. It probably could use a little bit more nudity. I think if more nudity was in there, probably be a bit more interesting.
Well, there was that brief stint of blonde nudity. Yeah.
I mean, that was pretty much it. But like, I agree. You're used to the sexual overtone. Like, even when they're in the closet and she's hitting on him, and he's basically like, oh, he's. I would have to say Josh Hartnett, like his character was always sexual with all of them. Even the whole condom joke. Oh, hey, here's the cherry jumbo condoms. You want, Yeah. And she's like, you're so mean. I can't. Why did you do that?
But I think that even with the script, I think the reason why the adults work better is because I think that they're seasoned actors and they know what to do with lines, and they don't just say them. They always have the little character business to do, where I think that what we have is we have a young cast, and Elijah Wood, I think that he knows what he's doing as far as acting goes, but the rest of them, I think, were pretty much cast for the way they looked. And so basically they're all kind of just saying their lines.
Yeah.
There's no, where I think that if they were seasoned actors, the younger cast were seasoned actors, they probably could take the stuff that they said their lines and add little character things to them to give you a sense of who they were. But all you had was makeup and hair design. That's what told you who they were, and that was it.
Yeah.
Makeup and hair design. Yeah. They were all pretty kids, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
well, so we want to. So, Vicky, you want to give us your final thoughts?
It was a fun movie, but it was not an Oscar-nominating material. But if you want to have some fun, you have an hour and a half to burn.
Get a Razzie.
It's your Huckleberry.
What about you, Keith?
It's not the worst film I've ever seen. But the thing is, I do enjoy the film. I know that I tore the threads this evening, but I do enjoy the film. But yeah, if it's a film, watch it for entertainment value, but don't overthink it because you're not gonna like it. So
there's no message. There's just no fucking message.
Message is become part of a hive, because if that happens and you survive, don't worry, you'll just come back and you'll just be so much more happier because life is just gonna be so much sunnier and rosier.
I agree. It's one of those films I could totally put it on their background, just be watch it and be oh, that's interesting. But yeah, you get towards the end, you're oh, you want more now. Keith has got me thinking of flipping it and thinking of the faculty being the ones who are trying to fight the kids, and how that can actually be, they can make it very serious or make it very comical in some ways. And the teachers who always wanted to punish
a lot better though.
No, but it's also the teacher who always wanted to punish some of these students and how they act, and literally being able to, because you're trying to defend yourself and defend your life. So it kind of be a comedic beat. But yeah. So after today's episode, I'm sure our listeners are wondering whether or not their family, neighbors, classmates, faculty, colleagues, or general population are what they appear to be. The thing about the unknown is that you just don't know. You might even be doubting whether or not we, your literary license hosts, are who we are. But rest assured, I wouldn't be who I am if I didn't tell you to head on over to our website at llpodcast.com to find all of our past episodes, check out our social and podcast platforms, as well as become a patron and read our reviews of books to screens and everything in between. Don't forget to sign up for our monthly newsletter, where we'll as well, so that way you can win an amazing limited season 1 t-shirt. Speaking of doubt, our next episode, we will be finishing the theme of the month, Who Are These People?, with Alfred Hitchcock's Shadow of a Doubt. Thank you for downloading, sharing, and liking the Literary License Podcast. Until next time, we hope you have a symbiotic day. Bye, folks.
Bye, folks.
I don't recognize the surface tissue at all. Casey, I don't want to blow smoke up your butt here, but I think you found a new species. Yeah, right. Hey, it could happen. New species are discovered every day. Don't be so cynical.
Could it be Gnathostimulata?
Nah.
They escaped detection until the mid-20th century.
You just know everything.
I'm a contradiction.
Check the mesodermic follicles on its underbelly.
What does that mean?
It means we gotta call the university, let them take a look. Maybe even get in on some of that federal grant money. Our secret. All right?
Shapeshifter, let me catch a glance. You got life, love, to push against. Oh, keep speaking. I am a swirl of love, fun, love, desire, sucking at your dust. Shapeshifter, so no one knows how to get you let me hear. Shapeshifter, so no, gotta get you on the line. Resistor of the easy road, keeps on hanging on your ride. You make me wanna hurt you, babe. So I can be the one to shift your shade.
Nobody trusts anybody. Nobody trusts anybody. Nobody trusts anybody.
Shapeshifter, so no, gotta get you on the line. Resistor of the easy road, keeps on hanging on your ride. You make me wanna hurt you, babe. So I can be the one to shift your shade. Shapeshifter, so no, gotta get you on the line. Resistor of the easy road, keeps on hanging on your ride. You make me wanna hurt you, babe. So I can be the one to shift your shade.
R.J. McCready, helicopter pilot, U.S. Outpost number 31.